too. And it's only the third time
Oh, there was a-
on that day.
But-
It'll be about that reason.
And then the other.
Like, since they've been keeping records, yeah.
Last week. Right.
What alarms me the most is having 72 or even 80s day in November. It's the fact that we had a whole bunch of days from the 60s leading up.
I know.
This guy,
You can always dismiss it as an anomaly. You get 1 or 2 days.
That's just very things up between the very issues. No, but well, it's interesting because I now have a. Never encountered before. We've got talking over dinner, and we ended up sort of roughing the outline of a potential paper together. But guys, the job applicant, so I'm really like, I probably shouldn't go with that until we've kind of got through this whole process. The interesting ideas about moving from west to east across the Atlantic in antiquity. Wow, this guy's smart. I mean, it's never happened to me before. Where not only sufficiently stimulated, right, the guy was the question, but it had so, oh yeah, I hopefully think that we should.
Yeah, no.
That's about an hour.
I just wanted to make sure it was yours.
Yeah.
I don't put something on yours that wasn't yours.
Yeah,
I know I started to wait a second.
Makes sense.
Gee, that must be something.
Yeah, it must be.
Our aging department. You please don't make the right down when I want the stairs, you know?
Place me.
Uh-huh. No, I don't. They said probably. So they took it apart and let it, they're still let it dry out. Put it in a big bag of rice. But yeah. No, no. Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, I think that.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, what do you want about that?
I'm having a tantrum.
They are really, they supposedly were on, but it was all. All right, let's get one more here.
Yeah, right.
And it's. Back to you, so. It's. You're not just in even that.
Right. Oh, yes, because you haven't been here, so I think I have yours. What's that?
Actually. I started coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're gonna have to be. It's gonna have to be collaborating, writing group report. I probably said.
Oh, way to the great.
And. You know.
I don't know if you've noticed this. I've had a phenomenon now where I teach one of the first, right? I do a lot of handwritten sheets. It's the man for people who come now all the time.
I just had a sit down exam with my students. And this one student, when he handed in this, he said, "What are you doing? Read it." And I was reading that page where I knew it about it. This was so bad. Literally the next class I went. Now, the class, him and I sat and he read it out loud to me, so I can read it. And even he's like, I don't know what that word, I don't know what that's written there. But he had to read it back to me. I couldn't read it.
My younger brother was the one who was could probably write an entire essay. So I learned. Oh no, this person, I think, is the guy undiagnosed with one stupid because probably an undiagnosed learning disorder. Lose the decimal point random.
That's not good for math.
Can't write the little ones, you know, take this number and multiply it with this number.
Good morning. It's lovely to see everyone. In beautiful Farmington. What a gorgeous day. And it didn't snow. All good. How much did it snow, Deb, in Fort Kent?
Kelly knows.
Kelly probably does know.
He was sporting 6 inches.
6 inches. Okay, summer's over.
We had it the last week.
Well, let me call us to order, and just for those of you, we have several board members who are participating by technology, and because of that, they will be counted toward a quorum, and to confirm their attendance and to assure that the trustees are able to hear and understand, the clerk will call the roll of the trustees online. Oh, except we don't have them yet.
I can hear you.
Mike, can you talk again? We'll just want to make sure we hear your volume.
Yes, yep, I can hear you.
Great, thank you.
We can definitely hear you. Great, great. And this meeting is live streamed on YouTube, and with closed captioning. So we ask everyone to speak clearly so that people will be able to hear you who are watching us. Let's begin with public comment. We have a number of people who have expressed interest in commenting. Remind commenters that we would please ask you to limit your remarks to 3 minutes. We're happy to accept written testimony beyond that, but let's begin with Maxwell McDonough.
Hi, my name's Maxwell McDonough. I'm a second-year student at UMaine Orono. And I just wanted to talk about the rising cost of living on campus. Especially as like someone who, like a student who lives in a residence hall on campus and is on the dining plan. This year, the price has gone up. And I just would hope that the school is doing everything in their power to keep that price stable. Because we all want to live on campus ideally, and there's a lot of private off-campus accommodations, and I would just hope that the school is doing everything in their power to try and keep people on campus and keep that affordable. And I don't know how the funding works exactly for the university system, but maybe the state could chip in more to the university system too. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Tamara Benson.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Benson. I'm a 4th-year student at the University of Maine in Orono, and I'm usually here talking about Divest UMS. I'm here again. For those of you who haven't heard, Divest UMS has changed its name. We are now UMaine Climate Action, and we're a student group at the University of Maine in Orono, and we are continuing our work towards environmental justice and climate justice at the University of Maine. That includes climate action and social justice, because they are very connected. I'm not going to talk your ear off today. I usually talk for the full 3 minutes, but I just want you to know that there's a lot of students at the University of Maine who care a lot about the climate, and we hope that you will continue to keep that in your minds as you're making decisions in the future. There's a lot of students on campus who care, and we hope that you also do. So thank you very much, and I'm gonna end my time.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. And finally, we have Meredith Waters.
This might not work. Okay. Hi, my name is Meredith. I'm a second year student at the University of Maine in Orono, and I wanted to echo the points of the previous speakers with that it is not affordable to exist as a student at the University of Maine. I can't afford to enroll in my classes for next semester. I can't afford housing, and it is very sad the way that students have to financially struggle to exist in this state. And I also want to echo the point of students really care about protecting the environment, especially how it relates to their lives on campus. We have recently seen some good changes on campus, and it's going to be, we're really looking forward to see more of those positive changes. And we also want to echo that we stand with the ongoing issues here at UMaine Farmington with students who have lost a lot of their faculty, resources, classes, and programs.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comment. Thank you very, very much. Let me just make some brief remarks here this morning. First, we want to thank President McDonald and all the UMaine Farmington family for a wonderful day yesterday, a great tour, really passionate discussion, and a wonderful meal. It was a great, great time. So thank you very much. The bar just keeps getting higher as we move from campus to campus. It's terrific. And the tour was particularly helpful. I also want to introduce Divya Singraham, who's our newest trustee, and ask Divya to say a few words. We're really delighted to have her. And this is her, I think, your first official in-person board meeting. So welcome.
Thank you, Trish. And everyone, welcome. As Trish mentioned, I'm Divya Singaram. I use she, her pronouns. I am a second year student at the University of Maine School of Law. And I have grown up in this state. I was born in Booth Bay, raised in Central Maine, and used to come to UMF every other weekend for orchestra practices. So I'm very happy to be back on this campus. And this weekend has just been incredible getting to meet staff and faculty and students. And I look forward to working with everyone and hearing your perspectives. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And before we go on, as most of you know, Vice Chancellor Robert Placido will be leaving us to take a wonderful job in Oklahoma. And we, on behalf of the board, just want to thank him for his incredible service, his data, and his warmth and real devotion to this institution and particularly to its faculty, and wish you all the very best, but you will be missed. So thank you. In tab 2, we have the proposed revision to the Board of Trustee bylaws that we talked about at the last meeting. We'll vote on that in January. And that is to make permanent the seat for the faculty member among the faculty reps at the table. And we welcome Clyde again today. So we'll be voting on that in January, at the January meeting. So just so you know, you have it. We have also had some conversation when we follow up on there are some current concerns about the bylaws and whether they are up to date and they need a review. So we will take that and figure out how we can force a few of you to agree to a subcommittee that would do a bylaw review and make sure that we're just up to date and that consistent with what practice actually is. It's always a good idea. As Lee's laughing, it's good to have your lawyer. You know? So we'll definitely move on that pretty quickly, but let's move on. I want to, we do the President's Roundtable. We've invented two things that seem to be succeeding. One was the event at each campus with the president, the faculty rep, and the student rep. They've been great presentations. And I hope the presidents will allow us to continue to do the President's Roundtable, where we have an opportunity for the presidents to give us a little good news. And before we do that, I know all our presidents are leaders in the field and all our folks are engaged in their professional organizations and doing all kinds of things that recognize your abilities and your skills and bring great honor to this university. Most recently, I've learned about the Association of Public Land Grant Universities, which represents 5 million students, 79 land grants, 22 systems that include SUNY and the University of California, historically Black colleges and universities in Mexico and Canada, a big organization. And I am very pleased to report that its new chair of the Council of Presidents is Joan Freeney-Mundy. So congratulations. It brings honor to you and to us. So with that, I should probably have her start the round robin, if you would.
Thank you, Trustee Riley, and good morning, everyone. A few pieces of good news from the University of Maine and the University of Maine at Machias. I'll start with Machias. They've been ranked number 66 among national liberal arts colleges in the U.S. News Social Mobility Index. It's the 4th highest in New England, and we are tied with Williams College. And this recognizes the incredible effort that goes in at UMM every day toward helping students reach new goals. In particular, I would call out the Family Futures Down East program there, which has had enormous impact over many years on the lives of students in Down East Maine. So that's UMaine Machias. A couple of things for the University of Maine. The Climate Change Institute recognizes its 50th anniversary this month with a number of events and celebrations for an institute that has had influence worldwide, as well as, of course, right here in Maine. In connection with that, a delegation from UMaine and Maine Law is attending the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC 27th Conference of the Parties. COP27 is how this is known best, co-headed by Cindy Eisenhower from UMaine and Nicholas Masinski, who's also at the University of Maine. And then finally, again, related to Machias, not quite finally, one more thing. The new Dean of Campus at the University of Maine at Machias, Megan Walsh from St. Bonaventure University, will join us in December and will be someone that we'd like you all to meet, of course, as soon as she arrives. Then actually, finally, the 27th NSF National Science Foundation EPSCoR National Conference. So you may know of EPSCoR, which is a longstanding program in the federal government to make grants to states that are typically underserved in terms of overall federal funding for research in those states. And so EPSCoR is an important program for Maine, and their 27th annual conference is being held in Portland, sponsored by UMaine with experts from around the country coming. They start today, they run today and tomorrow. So
thank you. President Rice, can I call on you?
Absolutely may. A couple items. We are very grateful that the construction with the Wadeen Gymnasium is well underway and looks like it is on plan to be completed so that our winter sports can start at the beginning of January. And my thanks to all the people involved, both at the system office and our partners, to ensure that all of the materials have arrived on time and that project is going to be finished on time. It's incredibly important to our athletics for that. My thanks for everyone that's been so supportive throughout that process. A couple of other items, I do want to give a special shout out to the Presque Isle community with the loss of our faculty member and coach, Aaron Marston, who is so important both to campus, to our women's soccer team, but also in the community itself. And of course, their daughters play with the Wildcats. So it was just a wonderful experience when both teams were in the playoffs, and the adjustments that were made both at the high school level and at the collegiate level. So people were able to head down to the game match at Old Town and then to Husson to see both games. And it was very nice to see. I think there were about 5,000 people, 500 people at the soccer match, and well over 2/3 were representing Presque Isle, so, and UMPI. So the Hudson crew there was a little cranky about that, but that we outshouted them at it. But and then just this past November, we've been waiting quite some time for this, but the USGS announced a national press release, the publication of a scientific paper in which our Dr. Chunzhen Wang is the lead author, detailing the discovery of rare earth elements at Pennington Mountain, which is over by Winterville, for those of you who know that area up in that part of the county. That includes a number of rare earth elements, including niobium and zirconium. And it is unique because it is the only location on the East Coast that has significant deposits of those elements. So this will be an unfolding event, I think, for many years to come. But Dr. Wang, as many of you know, has been involved in all sorts of geographic work across the county, and he has been doing field work for many months, doing the on the ground work. And so it was quite an honor for him to be involved, as well as a number of our faculty and our interns who do not get better field work research experience than what those students have been doing the past several months. So that's our good news.
That's great. Great. President Sekas.
Good morning and thank you. So just 3 updates from UMA today. 2 of them coming from the Maine Jobs Recovery Act. One of them is an award that's be coming out soon. I think you heard about it yesterday between UMA's Mental Health and Human Services Program and the University of Maine at Farmington's Rehabilitation Services Program. It'll be about just under $300,000 that's going to cover student tuition at both UMA and UMF, which will support the Substance Abuse Rehabilitation Certificate Program, which is needed in our state with the issues of substance use. The other one is one that I am grateful that President Rice held his tongue just a little, because we have another Maine Jobs Recovery Award with the University of Maine at Presque Isle and University of Maine, Augusta, in the Medical Lab Technology Program, where our goal is to double the number of graduates in the medical lab technologists. And we're going, it's about $750,000 for that. With the investments of both from UMPI and UMA, that total is about 1.5 million that we're investing in this workforce need in personnel, equipment, and facilities. The last, and I'm not sure I've mentioned it before, that UMA does have a plane. So the Cirrus SR-20, what? Maybe I should just stop now. But we have a really great partner with Maine Instrument Flight, and we're trying to leverage that resource more, get the students in that plane more often. We're actually able to now house that plane up in their hangar here in Augusta, and it will be heated, which is good for us now the snow's flying, and it will be rent free. So another help on the old bottom line here. So and those are the plain facts from UMA. Thank you.
That's great. Rent free, especially. President Hadeen.
Okay, so that worked. Great. Well, UMFK has a number of proud moments to share with you all today. On October 20th, we had a stakeholders retreat, which involved the Board of Visitors, Alumni Board, and the Foundation Board. It was a great opportunity for all 3 boards to collaborate on our campus, to focus on our strategic framework, and to really dig deep into one of the focus areas, community engagement, to think about strategies to increase our enrollment and recruitment and retention efforts. Through that process, the group determined that they would like to have such a retreat once a semester. On October 26th, we hosted a reunification drill. This mock disaster scenario coordinated between several academic departments, our nursing, behavioral health, and public safety. This is a fantastic example of how faculty and staff work together to create unique hands-on experiential learning events for our students. In addition, we had over 15 high school students from the drama department participate as actors during this mock disaster scenario. On November 4th, we had an open house for prospective students. 94 high school students were on our campus all day. They had an opportunity to learn about our academic programs, our support services, tour the campus, and have lunch in the Nolan Dining Hall. Just last week, Monday through Wednesday, the Commission of Collegiate Nursing Education Accreditation site visit team was on our campus. The team provided some initial remarks about their visit. They have stated that we have a wonderful undergraduate program, a great start to our graduate program in the Master of Science Nursing, and outstanding faculty and strong leadership. We look forward to receiving their full report in the future. This past weekend, the USCAA National Tournament was held during the weekend. And good news, our women and men's soccer teams are both the 2022 national champions, bringing home the first place trophies. So that's big news for both our men and women's soccer teams. I know. And then also the volleyball team is bringing home the second place trophy and are the national runners up. So thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. President Edmondson.
Good morning. I'm really proud to report from the University of Southern Maine where things are going well. We had also some success in our athletic teams. Our women's field hockey team last weekend advanced to the Little East Conference Final, as did our women's soccer team. Women's hockey played a really hard-won game. They lost by 1 point. The women's soccer team advanced to win for the first time in the program's history, the title for the Little East Conference. And so we're really proud of them. It's very interesting. I think that Division III sports are so important. And so one of the things that we've been doing is digging into that data. And what we're finding is that we're retaining our student athletes at higher rates than we are other groups of students. That affinity group is so important for us. And so that's something we're really looking into closely, and to understand how what happens with our athletic teams can be replicated in other parts of our co-curricular experiences. We also celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. Trustee Alexander was part of the panel for the Muskie School as we revisited what that act has meant for the state of Maine and for the United States. And so I'm very proud of the work happening at the Muskie School. Our USM Foundation continues to have record-breaking fundraising. We're at $43.7 million of our total campaign. And so we're really engaged in making sure that we cross the finish line strong with that current campaign. We're making good progress with the Portland Commons and the McGoldrick Center. They're on budget and on time. And our resident hall occupancy remains at 108%. And so we're really optimistic about the need for housing for the University of Southern Maine and the ability to fill that Portland Commons, in addition to the residence halls that are on the Gorham campus. We had a co-sponsored Veterans Breakfast on Friday with Southern Maine Community College. It was wonderful to see how Southern Maine Community College Veteran Services work so closely with the University of Southern Maine's Veteran Services, and how smoothly they passed the baton between the two universities. Some of the alumni who spoke at that event were students who started at SMCC and then went on to USM, and they also spoke about the strong support they feel. And anecdotally, one of the veteran students came to our house for dinner. We've been having students over to the president's house, and as a veteran, he said that he felt such a strong sense of community. So again, I think those affinity groups are just critically important for our success. Finally, the Osher School of Music will have its gala on December 2nd at the Cumberland Club, and we invite you all to attend. It's going to be an absolutely lovely event with incredibly talented students. I'm really proud of the students and the Osher School of Music. Thank you.
But we're waiting. Are you going to play? That will draw us all.
Yeah, no, I have actually, Megan Marino performed at the launch of our event, and she offered to come back in the spring to have a recital at the president's house, because we have Ellen Chickering's piano in the president's house. And that, of course, was her beloved teacher.
Right.
And so Laura Cargill and Megan are planning a recital there, and they've asked me to play the viola on 2 pieces with them, which is totally humbling to me, because I'm not used to playing with that caliber of musician. So I have a lot of practicing to do.
You thought a marathon was hard.
Yes, exactly.
And President McDonald.
Thank you. I just want to highlight what you had heard yesterday. Our faculty are out recruiting students. Normally, we think of the admissions programs out there, and they are out there recruiting. But the initiative that our faculty are taking, the recognition that we need more students, and the faculty are taking that initiative, bringing students to campus, and not only bringing them here to see this beautiful campus, but they're also giving them an experience of what it is like to be educated here, giving them a little mini course in a UMF intensive experiential education program. So the second thing I'd like to talk about is we had last weekend a memorial service for a beloved coach, Dick Meader. And this memorial service filled the entire Dearborn gym. And it just shows you, well, tells you a little bit about this community, of how the community comes out for each other. But it also speaks to the role that coaches play and how over the years, students came back because of the influence that this coach had on their lives. So we have a wonderful group of coaches here, and they play a powerful role in the education that our students receive.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. It's always great. Oh, I'm sorry, President Softly.
I was just getting ready to call the lawyers, but thank you. Thank you for that
I
invitation.
would never forget you.
So I have four things to report on. First, the building that you have all been so supportive of will finish on time and on budget, and we will start classes officially on January 17th, 2023 in the new building. All very exciting. Two things about that building. First, I really have to give a shout out to Consigli Builders who have helped us troubleshoot, keep costs contained while building something that is really beautiful for the students. And they've been wonderful to work with. The other thing is recognizing that President Zekas has a plane. I want you to all to know that the University of Maine School of Law has a bicycle room for our students to bring their bikes and have security there. So second big news from the law school, the bar passage rate this year hit 82%, which is phenomenal in light of the COVID problem. Bar passage in 2021 across the country was low. It appears right now, we're still crunching the numbers. It appears that Maine Law had the highest rate of recovery of any law school in the country for its bar exam rate. We have a student success program that is really working very well. You already heard that Professor Anthony Moffa is in Egypt at the climate conference along with one of our students, Michaela Balmer, and that is the first time Maine Law has been invited to the conference. We're very excited about that. And finally, one last shout out, our alumni are doing remarkable work. One stands out in this last period. Darcy McElwee, who is the U.S. Attorney for Maine, has been appointed by Merrick Garland as one of 12 attorneys who are serving on the U.S. Attorney's Advisory Commission to the President. So things are good at Maine Law. Thank you. And I'll cancel the call to the lawyer.
Okay, thank you. You must have been sitting back. I'm sorry. Couldn't have been. Thanks again. It really does help us to start with such good news. So let me just take a minute. We sadly have to acknowledge the retirement of some of our student representatives. And I think, Omar, are you here? Ah, there he is. Omar Abdul Jalil is leaving us from USM, and we have a certificate. If you would come up, please, sir. And I will read it as he comes. How's that? Certificate of Appreciation for his dedication and leadership as a student representative to the Board of Trustees from the University of Southern Maine. And we have a similar certificate for Rajay Marab, who is not here, and I bet that President Hadeen would deliver it to him.
You'll transport it.
Transport it. Transport the piece of paper.
We got it.
Oh. Well, no wonder it's going to be very hard then. He's in law school. Okay,
He's
Lee.
in law school.
Okay, great.
He's living.
He's living on the Gorham campus.
All right.
He's an RA.
This brings new meaning to student representative. He's a system representative. And let me, one more item of import. We have a search underway for the UMA president. I want to thank Trustee Dobson, Trustee Flood for participating as a trustee, and particularly Trustee Cates, who's agreed to chair the search, which was launched this week, and he is going to give us an update.
Thank you very much. We had our first meeting last week, organizational meeting, a lot of energy, a lot of commitment to find exactly the right person for that very special university. just on the verge of hiring the consultant to assist us in setting our meeting schedule. And there was a lot of energy and good energy in the room. So we'll report more.
Great, thank you. Okay, with that, let's turn to the chancellor's report.
Good to be, you got me? Okay. It's good to be with everyone this morning. We did a lot of work yesterday and obviously a fair amount of work yet to be done throughout the rest of this day. I do want to touch on a number of points that I think are important. I think it would be appropriate, Jeff, if you would join us at the podium and we'll talk about both the NECHI visit as well as the Unified Catalog project. I should say, as we recognize that Robert Placido is leaving us shortly, Jeff will be assuming temporarily that position. It will be that position's permanent filling will be subject to a search process, but Jeff will be in that position starting the 1st of December. Jeff.
I don't have a plane. Two brief updates for the trustees today. The first, responding to our NECHI visit last month, and you heard a little bit about this already, so I'll be brief. I also shared this update at the Academic and Student Affairs Committee meeting in October. Thanks again to the board, the presidents, and everyone in the leadership for strong participation throughout the visit. Between the individual university visits the evaluation team made and the primary slate of meetings held on the Orono campus, UMS community members were involved in about 70 different meetings with the team. And we conservatively estimate that 500 to 600 members of our community interacted with the team at some point during their visit, which is a testament to the strong level of engagement, and also is partly a function of encouragement to become engaged by our university leaders, our presidents, but also our faculty representatives, our student representatives, and our faculty senate and assembly presidents, who are all instrumental in encouraging their colleagues to take part. So we all want to thank them. In the concluding session of the evaluation visit, the team chair delivered a verbal exit report. You've heard a bit about that. It's important because the points articulated in that verbal report become the basis of the written report that the team submits to the NECHI Commission. The team in its verbal report identified 15 strengths specifically across 8 of the 9 NECHI standards for accreditation. Over half of those strengths affirmed unified accreditation as a tool for serving our students and advancing ourselves as a system, which we were pleased to hear. The team also identified 11 areas of concern across 5 of the 9 NECHI standards. Over half of those concerns were clustered in 2 areas, Standard 3, organization and governance, and Standard 5, students. This fact did not surprise us, and actually it was consistent with the way we wrote the self-study and the preparations we made for the visit. So we were knowing that concerns would be shared. We were pleased that they were shared in areas where we expected them, if that makes sense. From the very beginning, when NECHI granted the system unified accreditation in July of 2020, they told us that we'd be asked to write about our internal governance in the self-study. And they also focused in the interim visit they made with us in spring of 2021 on how we were supporting students in our unified accredited model. So we expected those 2 areas to be raised as areas of ongoing concern and areas of emphasis for improvement. And that's what we heard from the visiting team. We have created a tracker, a spreadsheet that we'll be using over the next several years to track our progress in each area of concern. The presidents heard about this last month. Their campus accreditation officers saw this tracking document earlier this past week, and the provost will see it this Thursday. And when everyone has had a chance to weigh in and we're in final form, we'll begin using it immediately to determine areas of action, the goals connected to those actions, and then the metrics we'll be using to evaluate how we've met our goals. In doing this, we'll then be able to report out on a regular basis to NECHI how we're improving in areas where we've been encouraged to improve. And we'll also then use that tracking document and all the information that it contains to prepare down the road for our 5th year interim report, which we'll begin working on in about 3.5 years. With 2 important caveats. One, that we haven't seen the written report yet, although we will shortly. And 2, that it's the commission's final assessment, not the evaluation team's final assessment that carries the day. Nonetheless, having shared those caveats, I will tell you based on prior experience with self-studies and prior experience with the evaluation process that the visit itself went very well, and we are well positioned for a positive outcome at the end of this road. And with that, before sharing a couple of brief unified catalog updates, I'd be happy to answer any questions the trustees have about the NECHI process or next steps.
Any questions for us, Jim? Yep, Roger.
Thank you, Jeff. Just so we'll know how much time to block off on our schedules, the final report that we get, approximately how long do you expect it to be? Is it 10 pages or is it 200 pages?
The final report that we get back. So what we'll get at the end, Trustee Cates, is a short, polite letter from NECHI, 3 or 4 pages long, typically maybe 5, written in a very NECHI way, thanking us for a thoughtful self-study and thanking us for a thoughtful process, and then delineating areas where they think we're doing well and areas where they think we should continue to improve in our unified state. That's what we'll get.
I think the translation of that is we read the self-study.
Yes.
I take it it's shorter.
Yeah, I will not be burdening you again with something of
Wasn't a burden.
that nature, I promise.
Trustee Alexander?
I was just wondering if the spreadsheet or the implementation plans include a discussion of the allocation of resources necessary for the smaller campuses in particular to develop the innovative programs that would allow more use of the tool of unified accreditation.
That's a great question. So the presidents, as I mentioned, have heard about this tracking document, but they haven't seen it yet. And the provost will hear about it and see it. After it goes to the provost, it will go back to the presidents before it goes anywhere else. So I fully expect to get some feedback about that element and other elements that the presidents and provosts would like to see this tracking document consider and account for as we go forward. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Onward.
Okay, unified catalog, again, 4 very quick updates. We completed the faculty one-stop resource, a website that I described for you at our September board meeting, on schedule at the end of September and went live with that website. The link is up and active on the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs site, on the Unified Catalog site, and on the Unified Accreditation site. Relatedly, we're now working on an MOU template that faculty who are active in a multi-university academic program or would like to be can use to develop the agreement in support of that program. We have a couple of examples of that in existence right now, and it seems that as we have more faculty come forward wanting to work with their deans and their provosts and their colleagues on other campuses on a multi-university program, we would like to spare them from having to reinvent the wheel. We'd like to provide a template that they can use. That template by design will be one that they can draw from, but are not bound to point by point, so that they can adapt as they need to. As Robert and I have spoken before about the need for a degree of innovation in all of this work, and we want to preserve that. But we also don't want to ask faculty to exercise time and effort where it's unnecessary. If we can bring the resources to them, we'd like to do that. When that template that I just described is finished, we intend to put out a system-wide message to all faculty, alerting them to the presence of the web resource and the template, and putting all those resources right in front of them so they can draw from them as they go forward whenever they need to or would like to. The work on the form that I described for you, I always feel bad talking about forms. It's not terribly exciting, but it's important. The form that I described for you at our September meeting, the domestic and international study away forms, forms used to help students take a course at another institution and bring it back to their home institution within the system and earn credit for that course. We're nearing completion on one of those two forms, and we have a ways to go on the other, but we are making progress, and the group that's been working on that along with help from our stellar IT team continues to move forward. And then finally, the unified catalog work over the last year has been led by a project team with broad representation across all of our universities and our law school. That team principally has functioned as an information sharing group, and with the support of the provosts and with the unified catalog team itself, we decided to form a smaller working group that would meet more frequently and more specifically focus on removing individual barriers to student success and priming the field for what will be possible when the repaving Main Street work is completed a few years from now. So we have a working group formed out of that broader project team. That group will meet monthly throughout the academic year. My goal beginning in January is to be able to come back to this group at every board meeting and at every academic and student affairs committee meeting and say, these are the things that we have now finished. These are the projects that are in process, and these are the next on the horizon, so that the board sees continuous improvement and continuous progress under the heading of unified catalog work. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Yep.
Can you tell us just how long is it going to take for the unified catalog to be kind of put together? What's the timing of that?
It will be, I would say, a continuing, so we will make improvements in all the areas we've already identified and more on an ongoing basis. I think any of the academic leaders in the room will tell you there will always be further problems that we can chip away at or remove entirely. So the goal of that is not only in support of the original areas that the chancellor identified a year and a half ago, improving visibility to future schedules of courses and access to those courses across the system, but in all other areas related to registration, course transfer, really a broadening field of academic activity in and around our Main Street student information system. So we're hoping by design that it will be a continuous improvement over time.
And so the software, the repaving Main Street effort, that's kind of dovetailing along with as we develop this course catalog, we're making the enhancements to the Main Street software to mirror that.
So my job is to work on the non-technical side of the repaving project while David and his team work on the technical side. David, I serve on his steering committee for that work, and he's fully apprised at all times of what I'm doing on my end of it. So we're very much seeking to make the two projects dovetail in the best possible way. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
So I'll go just a few other things that I'd like to touch upon. We, in furtherance of working together across our university borders, a small grant was made to us by the Davis Educational Foundation to support academic and administrative collaboration. We're very proud to receive that allocation. We have informed all of the campus leadership of the availability of those dollars, and we will be making decisions. Carolyn will oversee that process with Rosa, I believe, which are based small grants up to 10,000, but doesn't have to be 10,000, on how we can start to break down some of these walls on the basis of academic work being done on campuses. And we're very proud of that. We are packaging that as part of our travels to the ultimate goal, which is to make it easier for students to graduate on time and to access the strengths of our university system as opposed to only the university that they're currently enrolled at in. So very proud of that development. Also, I did want to share with you, because this has become a question in the past. The system has not been the primary marketer. In fact, hasn't been the marketer of our universities. However, having said that, and listening to some of the challenges that COVID deepened, we did this past year, and I've reported on this, have a campaign with respect to students from spring until actual classes starting, where we reached out to the students millions of times, believe it or not. Lots of people use their phone all day. They probably saw us many, many times in a single day. But that development and the system taking on that charge did lead to a larger a late enrollment in our universities than we normally do see. As a result of that success, we are moving forward with a campaign which will begin at the end of the month. And again, cover the whole spectrum of steps to becoming enrolled. So from November till August, we will be communicating with students who we have had interactions with, encouraging them to register, encouraging them to go to college, all of those questions. And this will not seek to persuade a student to attend one of our universities over another, but we do track what universities those students are speaking to, and we send them to those sites on a repeated basis, should they on that day decide that it's time for a decision. So we will be participating in that. It's an expensive undertaking, but one that we think that makes sense to be invested in and to give it a longer term try. And then presuming that that is as successful as our summer program was, that may become a regular tool and would begin even earlier than the month of November in the future. A lot of work to get people to agree, and a governance structure to make sure that lots of people are seeing and touching and understanding what's going into this marketing. But I think it's a major development for the system, and Ryan found the dollars somewhere and understood that it's students that we need to pay some of our bills, not just the system to pay some of our bills. So we better have more students. Very proud of that. I have previously given an update, and Jeff referred to a project that Jeff, myself, and Robert have been involved in, and that is reaching an agreement with respect to make it easier for students to understand the pathway to using and accessing courses at other universities within our constellation, but also clearing up those steps and having fewer steps necessary, and including answering some of the largest questions, like who's the full-time equivalent, what institution is that assigned to, or who claims responsibility for the hours, where that's assigned to, and then quite frankly, ultimately sharing the revenue between the two universities. And that, as of this morning, is approved by all of the presidents. We hope to have a written document to you in a matter of days on this matter. It is a major step forward with respect to making it easier for students, and hopefully will lead to a cross-pollination between those universities and their students that we've only experienced on a very small scale, and make it possible to be experienced on a much larger scale. Very proud of that. And with that, I do want to give a report as I informed the board that one of the changes I wanted to make in our visits to campuses was the inclusion of office hours. Office hours have proven slow start, the first one or two, and then all of a sudden people came. So as a result of the success in round one, I decided to add a second visit to all of the campuses for office hours, assuring presidents that they don't have to worry if no one shows up. I bring work that I can do, so that's not a problem. And began the second round, actually was in Farmington last week, and had a very nice visit, and will be out on the Gorham campus later this week. We'll also be with my very best friend, the president of of our law school this week as well. So things seem to be going well, and I have colleagues who will also be giving speeches. So I'll stop now.
Thank you. I would say at our last board meeting, we did raise questions about how will the money flow? How will unified accreditation work? Who gets credit? And I think the fact that this kind of progress has been made so quickly is just very, very, very wonderful news. So thank you.
Not that quick.
It's coming. It's coming.
We were working on it, but yes, I believe we'll be sending copies to everyone this week.
Great. Questions? Vice Chair Eames.
Thank you. Chancellor, I want to thank you and Ryan for your efforts at a more coordinated marketing effort to the students of Maine. I think I've been on that for a while and I really appreciate it. I guess that leads to one question, and I suspect it may be different for different campuses, but what is the turnaround time if a student applies to when they receive notification of when they've been accepted?
That has been a major undertaking and effort over the last few years. And we are seeing progress being made in that regard, particularly this year. It's not where it needs to be, but it's moving in the right direction, is what I would tell you. I think there's a fair amount of modernization that needs to take place across our universities with respect to how to handle those situations. And although we want to be able to give students an idea of what their financial package would be, it's not worth delaying an acceptance by, let's say, 20 days to do that, because by that period of time, you may have already lost the student. So major undertakings at each of the universities, and are urging that acceptances have the financial information if that's possible, and we are discussing the merits of accepting with respect, and then saying a financial package will follow shortly. Having in excess of 30 days between a fully executed application and an actual acceptance being transmitted to the student is not acceptable.
Right. Thank you.
Other questions or comments for the Chancellor? Seeing none, thank you. Let us move on to the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Robert. Slides, yes.
So I'm pleased to take one last walk through our data garden together with you this morning. I hope, and I say this, I hope that you maintain this culture of data informed decision making, but knowing the Chancellor, there's no chance that you're getting away from that anytime soon. So Heather is helping me drive here. It's a bit of a dance between us. This morning we started at maine.edu, and she went to data and policy, and she went down to the UMS dashboard. This gives you a quick snapshot as trustees to see just by graphical representation there on all the things, the key metrics that we have, whether we're up, down, and you see many of them have a plus means we're doing okay, minus means we're not doing so good, and equals is the trend is maintaining. We're going to click on enrollment about the middle of the page there, Heather. And I like to do it live. I also like to start from the beginning because you don't see it as often as we do. So it would be great if you all participated in this and looked yourselves from time to time. We are in here on a daily basis. So what we have here, scroll up to the top a little bit. The screen is kind of funny on your, it's thinking you're on a mobile device. So you'll see that we're the very first box there, it says spring. So that's to let you know that in one place you can switch between how we're doing in spring or fall or summer. But scroll down so we know we're on spring here. And I'm just going to remind everybody what this graph represents. So typical with universities, they report after census day what happened. That doesn't help us make management decisions. We need to know how we're doing well in advance of the outcome so we can make adjustments. So what this is at the bottom is the number of days before the start of the semester. And you can see those lines start forming at some period of time, like for spring, it's 100. So that's 100 days before the start of the semester, we start saying how many people have enrolled. So we can see the growth over time heading into the start of the semester. You can't see in this format here, but each of those lines is a different color. Those are past years. So one takeaway from these trends is you can see each year lays upon itself pretty closely. So the growth of our enrollment follows a pretty traditional path. So when a new year comes up and it doesn't follow that path, something is happening, good or bad. It could be that we've made adjustments and we're starting to see some improvements. Now, we already know that we were down in enrollment in the fall, so that has a negative impact on spring. We can recognize that. You can see here, Heather, if you hover over any of the lines at any particular day, you can see how well we're doing. The dot that's not complete, that's this year. This is where we are in this point. And you can see rolling into, now we're still early in spring enrollment, but we're 15% behind previous years. And you can see the different years, how we're ahead or behind, and in this case behind. So scroll back up to the top and let's switch to fall, that first box there. And we'll go back down and I'll just go through some, now that I've described it, I'll go through some quick numbers. So this is where if you grab so you can see we ended up fall at negative 4.6, and this is overall as a system. The boxes at the top allow you to pick each university if you'd like to see how any one particular university did. So now we're going to scroll back up, and where it says tuition residency there, Heather, we're going to uncheck. We're going to say uncheck the all, and then we're going to say just in-state, and then scroll back down. So this, okay, there. This is still a concerning trend that we continue to be effective marketing to out of state. We've made some adjustments, and I'll show you what we did with how we're doing with Canada here in a second. But in state, we continue to have larger than expected declines in enrollment, and you all know a lot of the factors culturally, politically that are happening to affect that, but that's something to pay attention to. After all, we are public institutions, and this is our primary mission to serve the citizens of the state. So go back up to tuition residency, and let's switch to Canada. Yep. I think you missed it there. So right before COVID hit, we realized we had studied our Canadian enrollment and realized that we had just about got down to zero. And it was because many changes that happened in Canada to their tuition rates, to their models, to their being more effective with their marketing and so forth. And frankly, we weren't paying attention to it. And so Ryan and I and some subcommittees met to talk about how we could get back into Canada, and you all approved a new tuition rate for them as a starting point. And then COVID hit and the borders were closed. But even with those barriers for students to get here, you can see the incredible increases of just focusing our attention on this. And so 80% the first year, and then or 80% first year, 20% the second year. And so you can see within the 2 years, we've almost doubled the enrollment from 100 students to 186. And while that's small in the scheme of our whole system, it shows that there's a lot of potential there. And I know looking at Deb just now, she's tasked her enrollment team to get into Canada, and that was pretty much stopped for 2 years. So they're into the high schools and really recruiting there. So while we do have a decline in demographics, we do have opportunities, and we do well out of state in the New England area. We need to hit Canada. I understand that visas are still an issue. International students, we've almost completely lost by numbers because of COVID and other effects. But we're seeing a huge increase in applications from international students starting out for next fall. And our hope is that the governments will get their acts together and we'll start to get those visas released and we'll start to have some of that. So efforts to go international, go more out-of-state students in Canada, those are still things that we can look to positively grow our enrollment. So I'm gonna skip a few things I plan to do and go to the top of the page, Heather, and go to she reads my mind. That was awful instruction, but amazing execution. They call them breadcrumbs, but that link brings you to our main dashboard. So scroll down and you can see there's many different reports here that we track. I just wanted to pull up applications. There's retention in there. We talked this morning with the faculty reps. There's some major program conferrals and what majors we have and all kinds of information there. And that keeps growing. So keep coming back to this to look and explore, but go back up to, so we're in applications. So click on, I didn't plan on this, but this question Chair Eames raised. If you go to the second tab there called aging, so aging is an application concept where an application has a cycle and steps. So a student submits an application and sometimes it's not complete and they have to come back and keep finishing it. And then they have to submit all their documents. And so that's kind of an in-process part. And it's on the student to get transcripts and all kinds of things. But each of those stages, then when the materials are done, we consider that a complete application. It's ready for someone to make a decision on that student. So that's a point. And then the student is then submitted that, given that complete application by a status of denied or accepted. And then the student takes an action. And so that's another step. And each of those steps has an average days to complete. So that those red bars are if you hover over the first red bar, you can see so the average number of days it takes after an application is complete, ready for a decision to be made is 12 days. And so a number of years ago, that number was 30 and 40 days. I presented to you all that we needed to have a goal of getting that under 10 days. And you can see the universities are all working on that. UMPI is, if you hover on theirs, 1 day between completed to getting a decision. It is something that I've heard the chancellor talk to the presidents personally and say, and just the other day to a group at one institution to say, unacceptable for us to be up at that 30-day range. We need to get down at that 10 or under, and the chancellor wants it to be more like Prescott for everyone. One day seems plenty of time to make a decision. So I did want to bring that up. And if you'll go to total apps, Heather. And by the way, these are updated daily, so you can look at our status yourselves. Yeah, okay. That's right. Yeah, as mean as I am, I don't ask the IR team to work on Saturday and Sunday. I wanted to just point out, we are already tracking how we're doing for next fall right now. And you can do that too by going in here and looking at our apps. We have to attract the students' attentions earlier, faster, make the decisions faster because our competition is doing that. And so you can see our progress right here before even a board meeting. And we're almost 8% ahead of last year for a lot of work that was done a year prior to change all of our processes. So while I can tell you that, I'm optimistic, you can look at the data and see that changes are being made. So any questions on that? Otherwise, I'm going to move over to some other data. Yes, Kelly.
Thanks for
Trustee
this
Martin.
information, Robert. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing our admissions teams. Do they have a point person that does the follow-up to make sure that they can speed this along? Or is every counselor in charge of their own follow-through?
It depends on the university.
So I'm looking at the successful, one-day acceptance. What are you doing at UMP, President Rice?
Place that it gets done within a less than 40.
And I guess I would offer a comment that working with almost every campus personally, some universities have had to take a full cleaning of every process of retraining their whole staffs, of bringing in new people. And that is occurring at just about every university. So everything from beginning to end has been modified in the last couple of years.
Get that down to the short, to the fewest possible points.
Super important. Good work there, because it's, once you lose them, you've lost them. You got one shot, so.
You can't see the LP chart up there. There it is. Yeah. Still that's
And interesting that this page comes up as a web page and the other one thought it was a mobile app. And we did add that feature to the dashboard where if you look at it on your tablets or your phones, it tries to modify itself to fit the screen better. But so we'll move on to this. This is so fitting for me. So 5 years ago, my very first board meeting was here at Farmington, actually with Trustee Martin. And the very first presentation I participated in was asking you all to consider using a product called Burning Glass. It was actually presented by Rosa. What was it? Was Brian Dorr? Yeah. And so today I wanted to answer a question and then also share some information. If you'll bring up the first PDF on the one on economic. Yep, that one. Yes. So Burning Glass was purchased by a company. Now the product is called Lightcast. We have had over the last year a number of the new trustees asking, when we bring a new program proposal forward, how do we determine if it's needed? How do we know that there's an actual demand or it's going to be successful? And actually, not just with the new programs, how are we looking at our internal programs to say, this trend is going to continue with a program that's struggling? And so this is just one of the tools we use. This company pulls together publicly available information from government agencies, from school systems, from iPads and some other sources. And then they curate their own data by pulling information from the web to get demand. It's really interesting, and I'm sure we could have somebody at a future time talk about the technical details of it. But I wanted to just share with you a few things. And so I really would have loved to demonstrate it, but I practiced with the tool, and it does take a minute or two between every time I query it, and I just thought it was going to take too long. So I pulled a report out. This first one is a state overview, and I just pulled Maine, but the point of this is to show that when we're thinking about going into a state, we have very detailed information at our fingertips about what that state demographics, the market demands, what the industries are, and where we could be successful. So I'll just go to, these materials are included in the diligence, so you can read through them with more detail. But if you go to page 10, so just first point, so in Maine, I thought it was interesting to get a third-party perspective on projections. That we talk a lot about one of the things that holds us back is a decline in demographics. This company has seen a bit of growth. We also know that the state has been working and it's been effective in attracting people to Maine. We particularly, people migrating from other countries, and all of that work is paying off, and they project that over the next few years that we're going to have a 3% growth in population. And that's wonderful news because that has not been the trend over the last 10 years. Now, it's not equaling out the people that are coming don't necessarily have high school age students or even kids in K-12, but we are growing and more people is better just generally. If we could skip to page 14. So again, I'm just picking out a few things. There's a lot more in this report, but this gives you a breakdown in the state of how they compare in different categories of different demographics. So we have fewer, you can see the band that goes across there. It's just a quick way to reference that we have 251,000 millennials, and that by our population size ratio wise is below other states in the US or the US as an average. Retiring soon, we have way more population or higher population of retiring soon, which is concerning, right? So these are all people in our workforce ready to retire. So by percentage, we're higher than the US. You can see our diversity. That's the challenge there for us, well below. And scroll down just a bit so we can see the other half of the page. Higher percent of veterans, way lower percent of violent crime. Thank you, Lee. And a lower percent of property crime as well. So one more page on this, which I found interesting, is 16. So, and again, a lot more detail in the report, but this is an interesting way to demonstrate where people are coming from. So it shows you the migration from the highest migration there being Massachusetts. That's that blue band coming in. And then when people leave Maine, where are they going? And you can see the highest band there being, is that New Hampshire? And so why is this important to us from an academic standpoint or program standpoint is particularly the inbound, there's an attraction to Maine already. And so there might be, that could be one reason that we would go into Massachusetts or in that county particularly to advertise our programs. So families are already considering us as a state that they want to live in. So. Okay, we'll switch over to the other report. Any questions on that? Obviously, it's there for your reference afterwards. So, and this is really where the question came about new programs and managing our current programs. I just picked one because it's a hot topic right now, and you Heather scrolled by it a little bit. There's bioengineering, biomedical. So you can go right into this this platform, pick a program, and hit print, and it gives you this whole detailed report. And so we're going to go down to page 6 to look at one data point here. So this is the general overview of on the academic program side. So if you'll scroll down, it in the top there, it showed program delivered face-to-face and hybrid and at a distance. But here are competitors in the area. So Boston University, University of Connecticut, and so forth. And you can see their trends. So in a snapshot that used to take us hours and hours to collect manually, we have at our fingertips the ability to see a landscape, to see what the potential is for us to compete in an academic program. So we'll just go down to page 7. Another thing too is getting an outside view on what the trend for that program is. That was usually left to an academic department or my shop, and it's, no matter how scientific we approach the data, it's a guess. And so it's really nice to have an external third party also give you an opinion on what that growth is. And then the last page, page 15. An important element of every program from now on, if they're not already doing it, and you heard we had examples here at Farmington last night, when we develop programs, they have to have better relationships with the top employers. And so again, right at your fingertips, you can see these are the top employers for that particular industry, how many job postings they've had in this particular period. And it makes it really easy for me, or for now Jeff, when a program proposal comes forward and I'm looking at the justification, to go back, run this report and say, does it align with what the program is saying for us? So, and you can also do that too. So that's it. Questions?
I hope your new employer will give you a big sweatshirt with the D on it.
Not for a grade, but for data, right?
Data.
Madam Chair, I have a question, Mike.
Oh, sure, Mike.
Yep, a quick question. Does your data, do you work with a community college? Because I know when you look at labor market participation rates and a lot of the information you have given, I know the community college also has access to that information. Is it the same source, or have you done a comparison?
So I was looking to Rosa. I think they also use Burning Glass. And I didn't in this particular report check that I wanted to see associate degree level too, but you can fine tune the report to also include any community colleges that participate in those programs.
Okay, so it's pretty much you're using the same source then?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yep. Trustee Singraham.
Hi. I'm gonna wait till, okay, here we go. I'm wondering if you could share how this information gets shared out or trickled down through different campuses, if at all, or if it lives with your office.
So every campus has access. They have their own login to go into the tool and run their own reports. Yeah. Good question.
Anyone else? Trustee Alexander.
If the focus is on employment and business and job descriptions, where is the ability to consider public service work, county and state government work? I saw management rates very highly here, liberal arts and business oriented type of degrees, ones that are not. Where does that reside here? How do we handle that need for a public higher education system?
Yeah, absolutely. So two answers. One, the burning glass or the light gas information does include the demand from government agencies because they also post jobs. And so, and in fact, in the first report of just the main overall, the largest employer is government. So that's, I don't believe the question you're asking, but there is some data in there. This is but one part of a program proposal, is demonstrating the demand. My academic colleagues would rate this pretty low in their priorities, but it's important for this group to understand. There are other categories in the program proposal that require that second step, but it's not available in this particular tool.
That's helpful, that we don't use this kind of data as the sole means by which we're structuring our priorities. Or yes, thank you.
And they appreciate that.
And Robert, do I recall in this report, didn't it show, I thought it showed healthcare number 1, state government number 2, and University of Maine system number 3 largest employer in Maine. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Yep. And they have healthcare 2 different ways. So if you consider them in total,
Need to develop more diversity in our workforce. That's our job. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Trustee Flood?
Thank you. And thank you, Vice Chancellor. I just was wondering if if you know the answer to this, are other states using the same data sort to compete against us? Does everybody do the same thing, or are we at the forefront or at the rear of the pack in getting ourselves acclimated to this kind of data?
I don't know every state. I can just tell you anecdotally that this is the largest company and they have a following. And in fact, it was merged with the Burning Glass was merged with the even bigger company that most people use. How they use it is going to be uniquely different for sure. I have been an advocate of it, so I have gone to other places, my prior institution being one, to demonstrate the effectiveness of it in program evaluation and market demand. So they adopted after us. I think we were pretty early adopters of Burning Glass. I would say it that way, but I think we've where I would hang our hat on and compliment us is as a board, all our processes, academic leaders, it's embedded in our culture and our system now. And I don't think that's the case anywhere.
Thank you. Anybody else? A great swan song. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's turn now to research and innovation and ask Vice Chancellor Fernie Mundy. More slides. Got a moment. More slides.
So that's a difficult act to follow, but I'm pleased to be able to update you a bit on the work of the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, with a focus on UMS research to inform public policy. And I want to give special thanks right here at the beginning to Sam Warren and to Jason Charland, who worked very closely with me, and to Ryan Lowe, who partners with me on many pieces of this work. So just a word or two about research. We talk about it a lot, or at least I talk about it a lot, and we've had increasingly broad conversations across the system that expand to include research, development, scholarship, scholarly activity, creative production, which is a part of the general portfolio of research. And most folks, I think, when they think about it at first, think about research as contributing new knowledge or building a new technology, or improving our understanding of humankind in some way, or creating some new contribution that will advance our world in some way. We think about solving the problems of the world and bringing knowledge from science, from the arts, from humanities, from the full range of fields that we have in universities to solving those problems. And I agree that's typically, I guess, maybe where we begin and what we think about as we look at faculty work and their portfolios that come to us for tenure considerations and all. But at the same time, in our system, another important dimension of research is the engagement of our students. It distinguishes us as a system. And as I've been going around and talking to presidents and to faculty and to staff around the system, that is such a strong commitment that we need to turn that into an incredible asset of this system, because it's happening out there. Our researchers, Ray talked about this incredible discovery at UMPI from Professor Wang. He's involving his students. And that happens system-wide. So we create new knowledge, we create new understandings of the world. That's the work of university researchers and scholars. We engage our students, but there are a couple of other aspects of research in which we are also very, very strong in this system. And I wanted to highlight those today as I'm meeting with and talking with folks around the system. And the major one that I wanted to talk about is the way in which our researchers and scholars across the system inform policy at the state, national, and even international level with their work. Now, I'm careful with my words here. I'm talking about informing policy, not advocating necessarily for policy, but indeed providing the knowledge base, in a sense, the data and evidence that can help with policy decisions, which in Maine is very tightly tied to economic growth and to the development of a workforce. So all of these kind of secondary byproducts of research become really very important to us as a system. So with that, I'd like to focus on how a few examples of areas where our system level researchers across our system are actually informing policy in the state and beyond. So we can go to, oh, wait a minute, I can do it. All right, there you go. So our legislature, you may know, has a genome editing technology advisory panel. And you have these slides in your book, and I'm not going to go through all the words on the slides, but this panel is looking at broadly the areas of genomics, the potential for biomedical economic development in the state of Maine, the importance of this potentially to our future as a state, and the panel has been going on for some time. It turns out that many researchers and administrators from the system have been called upon by this panel to provide advice, and you see some of the examples here, ranging from talking about the specifics of gene editing and what that work is, and also down to how do we think about a whole biotech sector, what are the humanities and legal issues. So I want folks to know that our system does invest in its researchers in ways that help them support these kinds of activities at the state level, and it's a very important piece of the research portfolio of a public university system. In education, as you might expect, we are also very, very active. Our researchers across the system engage. Perhaps the best known way in which that happens is through MEPRI, the Maine Education Policy and Research Institute, a long-standing partnership with the legislature to take a look at problems that the Education Committee and other dimensions of the legislature bring to us. So you see here, it's co-directed by Amy Johnson at USM and Janet Fairman at UMaine. And that's a group that responds to specific questions for which research might be useful in providing answers. There are lots of other examples. UMaine has the RISE Center, which informs professional development of teachers across the state and well beyond. The access to inclusive education resources, which used to be called the Maine Autism Institute for Education and Research, Stop Hazing at UMaine. And I would particularly call out all of the UMS teacher education preparation programs, including, of course, our colleagues here at the University of Maine at Farmington. They work together to help to respond to state queries and state challenges, most recently for the certification requirements for teacher preparation programs across the state. Again, all influenced by scholarship and research, either that's done in this state by our own faculty or that is done in their fields and with which they stay very deeply familiar. So it's a little bit hidden, but I wanted to call attention to it because it's so important for the state. I would add here that, of course, in the areas of climate and energy action, with Maine's climate plan, Maine Won't Wait. We've had incredibly rich involvement across the system of scholars in everything from forestry, industry areas to climate science. Nationally and internationally, the work is well known. Here are some examples, but I would add others. On the Climate Council, University of Maine Farmington faculty member Drew Burton and two UMaine Machias faculty, Brian Beal and Tora Johnson, also participated in this, and others involved in committees and so on. Again, forming policy recommendations to the state on the basis of research. What makes it possible is that they are doing the research here in Maine, in their labs, in their studios, in their research groups with students, and so the impact is quite wide-reaching. A lot of focus on the economy here in Maine and what it takes to have data-driven economic policy and planning. We've offered a few examples here, both from UMaine, USM, the Cutler Institute in particular, and various committees that involve researchers from around our system. On the Consensus Economic Forecasting Commission, on which Ryan Lowe serves, Andy Crowley, the chair is Dr. Sheena Bunnell here at UMF. Again, economists, scholars in economic policy and planning are shaping what happens in our state in really exciting ways. This doesn't always happen every place. And so the fact that we're able to do this is something I think we need to highlight a bit more on our natural resources and a policy relative to agriculture, aquaculture. We could go on at great length about the examples here, and so you just see more of it. Improving health outcomes, another place of importance in Maine where you see the range of areas in which our system researchers work. Again, there's work at UMaine, at USM, and more broadly with various centers that invite the engagement of folks across the system. So I want just to make it known that our system is doing its part in shaping the policy of the state of Maine and also informing it by informing it from a research and evidence base. And some places where you can find out more about this, highlighted here. And then I'll just close with a little bit of an update on some of the activities our office has been doing since we last talked. We convened a group of the research leaders from across the campus, the equivalents of vice presidents for research for those campuses that have them, or others who are interested, and had a first conversation about what's needed and how we can identify resources that will advance the work on all of the campuses. In particular, a lot of interest in engaging students. How do we do more? There's already a wonderful array of that work, but how do we do even more to build curricula and opportunities for our faculty who are doing research and scholarship to make that central in their work with undergraduates? Another need that is emerging, particularly as we see more and more success with earmarks and other areas, is for administrative support to be sure that we're protecting and administering our research in compliance with all the rules that go along with that. We have been very successful through the work of many people in this room in the implementation of the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan funded projects. We heard from President Zakis and President Rice about 2 that have made their way now into actuality, into reality. But I would point out that there are several others, and we can talk about those more. They've been kicked off with this federal funding that has come through the state post-COVID, and they are underway. And we think of them now as a portfolio of projects, again, with great impact in the state. I would say here the 55.3 million in congressionally directed spending that has been requested by Senator Collins and King and Representative Golden, pending in draft fiscal 23 appropriation. So we're watching all of this very closely, of course, as it moves through the federal government, and also the work of the implementation of the dollars that have come in already for 22. So the earmark work, well established. Now we've with 2 years of experience under our belts, we've tried to normalize this process and make it even more powerful system-wide, with great help from our delegation, of course. And then finally, I'll close with the fact that this fall, as I think I've told you, we started a process where we did a call for concept papers. They were due in October. We'll do it again in the spring. The idea being that it will put us onto more of a routine schedule for knowing what great ideas are out there in the system, so that when deadlines come, when we hear of some new funding opportunity, we're more ready. Can't say that we'll be fully ready, but because the good ideas just come when they come. But for this, 113 submissions from each university and the law school, totaling a wish list of $500 million in research. So that's actually really exciting. The ideas are coming, they're being generated. Some of them are cross-university, and many of them are new for these researchers and these individuals. So I share with you the fact that there's no shortage of great ideas. The dollars are starting to come, and we are making a difference in informing the state and working both with the private and public sectors by connecting our researchers to them. So questions or comments?
Trustee McMahon.
You've done an excellent job of informing the trustees. What are the plans to inform the general public, those that control our purse strings, about the role that we're playing?
That's a great question, Trustee McMahon. Obviously, we're very proud of the work, and every time we do a public presentation here, I think we're reminded of the importance of that piece of the communication and the, in a sense, the self-advocacy that we need to be doing. So it happens in different ways. Sam Warren's is especially important in making sure that we're in front of the legislature as frequently as we can be, with specific examples, often with our partners to kind of testify on our behalf. That seems to be most effective. If we're using business partners or others who have benefited from this research and have them available to help us, we have worked on that. We're also looking at the MEIF annual report as an occasion to really expand how we tell the story. That's a report that comes before you every spring, goes to the legislature, but that is an occasion when we collect all of the great examples and put them in one place in a report. But like many reports, it doesn't necessarily get the legs that it should to get out. So I think this spring is a good occasion for us to really push on this. I'm assuming by your question that you mean we should be. So we'll keep looking at ways to do that and open to ideas, of course.
Other questions? Trustee Sigmund?
This is just a comment, but this is so exciting and important to students. And I think I'm just speaking with students, and from my own experience, this prepares us for careers. This is one of the opportunities and reasons we come to study, being in a classroom and getting to apply that. It's just incredible. And so thank you for your work. And I think the more we can highlight this for students is the better.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I would add it to Dr. Placido's the fantastic Burning Glass data, which tells us what we see as industries that are coming and that need the workforce and so forth. You combine that with an intentional way of enabling students to get those experiences early on our campuses. I think we have a winning combination. So I'll be speaking with you, trustee, about how we can do even more to make this possible for students.
Can I ask, given all the Burning Glass information about healthcare and biotech and all the work underway, do we have any kind of system collaboration with the University of New England, given our research strength and their health strength?
Absolutely. In fact, just recently, the University of Maine led the sponsorship of a healthcare and health science convocation, essentially at UNE. It was held there, but it was statewide. Sam maybe can give us a bit more detail about how many participants there were and so forth. But it was for the scientists to talk to clinical providers and together to try to look at what the agendas need to be. And one thing that I would say may surprise people, and it maybe should be a first focus in a kind of more elaborate public outreach, is how much work goes on at particularly the University of Maine, which I know best, but I assume some of our other institutions as well, in biomedical engineering, in basic fundamental medical research. We have a program called the Graduate School for Biomedical Biomedical Science and Engineering, GSBSE, where we partner with Jackson Labs and with other organizations. So there's a lot, but that's not typically brought together and described. So I appreciate the question. We'll do more with it.
Good. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Why don't we go on with Carolyn Dorsey, Vice Chancellor Dorsey, and then we'll take a break, a very brief break, and then we'll move on to the budget. Vice Chancellor Dorsey, strategic initiatives.
Good morning. So no one wants to go between people and lunch, but as I'm walking up and I hear I'm between people and a break, that can be as equally unnerving. So, but I would like to just take a quick moment to give you an update first on our system strategic planning efforts. Since we last met, Huron Consulting Group has completed their second round of visits to all of the campuses in the law school to talk to students, faculty, and staff, and gather information that we're going to use to try and tease out what might be the most strategic initiatives, the things that people feel are opportunities and challenges, those elements that really need to be considered when you're thinking about future aspirations for the system and all of our universities. They've also continued to engage with their external stakeholders. There's a list that the system provided, the BOT has also provided the trustees some external stakeholder groups that we thought would be really important to talk to get their feedback on what it is that we're doing and what we might be able to do more of to assist in their efforts. And we're using all of the information that's coming back to help us begin to inform the next steps in thinking about drafting the strategic plan. So Huron has gathered a lot of this information. They've been bringing it back to us. They meet with system staff weekly. They've recently met with the presidents and had discussion with them. And I believe they're slated to spend some time with you all, the trustees, in the beginning of December to really do a bit more of a deep dive into this information. And I wanted to say that in listening to them and hearing some of the feedback, we really appreciate the candor that the folks who have taken the time to meet with the consultants, they've been open and honest about the things that they're excited about, but also some challenges and their role in how we need to move things forward. So it's been a really informative process all the way around. So next steps for us, we're really beginning to think about how we use all of this information and begin to set up a process where we can all work together to start to draft the plan. But as opposed to me giving you kind of the timeline approach, I thought I would perhaps invite Trustee Kane to discuss what, from the committee perspective, as she's the chair of your strategic planning committee, what's happening from the committee side.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate it. The committee had its
second meeting as an official committee, November 2nd, so just a couple of weeks ago, where we heard from our consultant, sort of their initial takes on what were the emerging themes from the campuses. At that point, they had completed all but 2 of the second round of visits. And I think, again, there were no decisions made at that meeting, but it was a pretty robust discussion of impressions from the campus, feedback, also where we thought there might be some gaps that had been identified of things that we expected to hear but hadn't heard yet, and where might those things come into the conversation. From a committee perspective and a board perspective, we are looking forward to and continuing to engage with the strategic planning work at our retreat. But I think it's important to say that, because I've gotten this question from a few people, Huron, our consultant, is not, they're not like drafting a report and going to give it to us and be like, here's your plan, have a great day. It's going to be our work and the work of the stakeholders and the partners across the system to actually do the work of drafting sort of the vision, right, which comes primarily from the board with all of this input, and then all of the strategic drivers and the initiatives underneath, which will be an effort of all of us and undertaking in the coming months. But generally, I'm pleased with where we are from an information gathering perspective and a timeline perspective, but I do think we'll be digging in at a much bigger and deeper level in the next few months. And I really appreciate Carolyn's partnership and the partnership of everyone who participated across all the campus visits, the first and second times that the consultant visited. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? And we will, as Emily points out, we will be diving deeply into the strategic plan in December. And our goal is to have it completed in May.
The chair turned to me and anything you want to add? What I would say is we have a lot of work to do. I want to assure the trustees that this is a collaborative effort. We will be working on drafting. You'll be working on ideas, and we'll try to draft to incorporate those. There'll be a lot of back and forth and sharing of drafts and any additional information that is brought to us. But hopefully we will meet the deadline and that we will have our first strategic plan since 2004.
Great, thank you. Anybody comments, questions?
If there's no questions, I have one more item under my report. I actually say it's under my report, but all I'm doing is kicking it off. So actually, the UMS Transforms, which, as you all know, is the $240 million investment by the Harold Alfond Foundation. We're going to give a brief update on that. I think Chancellor Malloy will initiate, and then over to Vice Chancellor and President Freeney Mundy.
So we have a series of slides that I'll walk you through. We talk about the Alfond commitment quite frequently. I will remind people that these are dollars to be contributed over a 12-year period of time. We're actually finishing year 2 at this point, starting year 3. And the money's flow will go up as the years accumulate. So it's important to remember that we did not receive a $240 million check. And at the same time, we also have to raise money for matching purposes. I would say that it does break down into categories, but the Alfond Foundation has been generous to our individual universities and system in the past. And of course, at the time this commitment was made, it was the 8th largest single commitment to a public university system in our country's history. Since then, I think we've been surpassed by a few others. And I did see that Mr. Bezos is committed to giving most of his $132 billion away. So we should add him to our list. I do want to say that if we can go to the next slide, next one after this, who's doing that?
I did it. I didn't know, so I just did.
Okay.
I didn't prep, so.
Just to remind folks, it comes in tranches, basically 4 areas of expenditure: $75 million with a $75 million match to the Maine College of Engineering, Computing and Information Science, $55 million with a $50 million match to the Maine Graduate and Professional Center, $20 million with a $25 million match to the student success and retention. You will recall that we have discussed that quite a bit as we kicked off an early iteration of this program at a single university this past year. Other universities joined, and hopefully this coming year, all of our universities will be participating in programs around student success and retention, and specifically giving students an early experience in the field that they have indicated that they want to be working in the future, and wherever possible, including a research opportunity very quickly in that student's program. And then $90 million match to specifically for the University of Maine Division I athletics. We get a lot of questions about this. Why is this not going everywhere? We don't get to choose where people give their money. Mr. Alfond himself had a major commitment to Division I athletics being available in the state of Maine. There's a statue of him outside the stadium. One of the best and most exciting places to see a collegiate hockey game is the Alfond Arena on the University of Maine. But I will also say to you that I believe that the University of Maine is trying to make investments that will also aid our other universities and quite frankly give us major opportunities to invite back to our facilities state championship rounds in a number of sports, because quite frankly the sooner we can identify Division I athletic potential in the state and land it at our university, the better off we will be. Now, I do want to go back for a second and explain that, for instance, in the Black Bear Athletics commitment, we are closing in on finishing our target with respect to the dollars to meet the Alfond match. Likewise, we are making some progress, need to make more on the student success area. We have a path forward to raise substantial monies on the Maine Graduate Professional Center, and have raised substantial money, but have a substantial way to go on that, I want to add. And with respect to the Maine College of Engineering, Computing, and Information Science, there too we have made major efforts in fundraising, or at least lining up commitments that are project driven, and that includes from the federal government as well. Just want to, then I'll turn it over to Joan.
Great, thank you, Chancellor. Picking up.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor. And I would just add, let's go back back one, not Carolyn. Yeah, I wanted to say a bit about match. The Chancellor, of course, has summarized this. The match is required in the period of the award, which is over 10 to 12 years. I would also point out that the dollars are not all here. The Chancellor has also said that, and there's actually a schedule for when these funds will be released, which has to be put in sync with our plans to do the actual work. There's great eagerness to get the work going right away, as you would expect. And we've done that in each of these 4 areas at the same time, because the dollars don't sync exactly with the timelines. Those raise all kinds of, that raises very interesting issues and challenges for us. And I just point that out because we'll be back as needed with you all as we try to keep the work moving. Second thing I wanted to point out is that we were able to reach I think quite an important agreement with the Alfond Foundation about match. Previously, when there had been funding from the Alfond Foundation, the typical expectation was that match would come from the traditional foundation style fundraising that we do in universities here in the system. And what we were able to reach agreement on is the concept that match could really come from 4 different sources, federal funding being one. And so, for example, what's already potentially in hand for Mises is federal grants, large investments in some of our research infrastructure that'll be tied to Mises. Second category for match would be corporate philanthropy. So if we are able to get on Mr. Bezos's list, that would be a different kind of match. Third is The third would be the traditional philanthropy, as we've discussed. And the fourth would be various types of state funding, perhaps bonding, perhaps other kinds of special sources, and all of that, Ryan and his team helping us to figure out. So this creates a very interesting organizational structure, which requires that we have a whole team that's just thinking about those different categories of match and what the targets should be for each of these 4 areas in each of those categories. So we'll go to the org chart with that preface. Again, don't expect you to be able to, it's in your book, so you can see the fine print if you wish, but we have a traditional grant, large center scale grant kind of structure with the executive chair leader, Chancellor Malloy, and then principal investigators, traditional federal language that at this time are Carolyn and myself, other leaders here, senior project staff. Of course, we did have the pandemic, so indeed we're in year 2, but it has been challenging to get this moving as quickly as it probably should be, and we're I think now ready to take off in great ways. Teams in each of the 4 major areas with leads or leads plus co-leads. And so you see the names here for each of these areas. This changes as personnel change. I point out that for Mises, the lead was Dean Dana Humphrey. He has retired. The UMaine interim dean is the lead right now, and then Dean Giovanna Guidoboni will come in as the lead for Mises, and so forth. Oops. And then there's much on the operations side. So you see the leads and other names for this fundraising and finance side as well, the match. We're very excited about the project. Obviously, it is a system-wide project as its reach works out, but a lot of this is resting on hard work by many committees of faculty and staff, hundreds of people involved in these different committees as we go, trying to organize a way that we move it all forward on some timely schedule. So excited to be talking about this, and we could go into a lot more detail, but we won't. Carolyn should wrap it up because she's standing up there.
Any questions?
Questions, comments? Everybody check your pockets, spare change.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Why don't we're doing well. Why don't we take a 10-minute break and be back here at 25 after 10? Lasting 10 minutes, and here we are, back again. Let's everybody take their seats and we will proceed. We're doing well on time. The important issues before us was the FY23 budget, and I will turn to the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, Ryan Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two pieces of my report this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about investment returns, and then I'll defer to the CIO and have him come up and give a repaving Main Street update. So your board materials include the September investment results. So for the 3 UMS portfolios, the managed investment pool with a market value of 320 million saw a loss of 6% in September, followed by an estimated gain of 4% for October. So this is the monthly roller coaster that we're on. The pension fund with a market value of 20 million saw a loss of 4.6% in September, followed by an estimated gain of 2% in October. And then finally, the operating fund with a market value of 321 million, a more conservative asset allocation, saw a loss of 1.6% for the month of September and an estimated gain of 1% in October. This brings estimated net investment loss to 2.9 million for the fiscal year to date, compared to budget. That puts us off by 5.5 million through October. We did have a couple of good days last week, and hopefully that will pick things up going forward. The second piece of my report I was going to defer to the CIO in the corner. David will provide you an update on repaving Main Street. I think while David's coming up, I did want to mention, just want to echo the comments, a couple of the comments from that I heard last night and from the students. And, you know, as a super proud alum of this campus, I came here as a 23-year-old, non-traditional, certainly for Farmington, and was stumbling around in life. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to come here and I knew I wanted to play golf, but I didn't really know what else I wanted to do. Very first class I took was a political science class, an American government class. I just loved it. And in between that class and my next class at 10 o'clock, I changed my major. You know, I owe everything I have to this campus and everything that they've done for me. So I just wanted to note that in the spirit of all the great comments last night.
And we thank the University of Maine at Farmington for that.
It is. Excellent. Good morning. Thank you, Ryan, for being brief. Let's give me a couple extra minutes to talk about repaving Main Street. My name is David Demers. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the system. Good to see a lot of familiar faces as well as some new faces around the table. So in that spirit, knowing that we have some new members, we thought it would be appropriate to provide an orientation to the repaving Main Street project, how we got to this point and what we are hoping to achieve. So if you will indulge me, I'm going to take us back in a time capsule to about 20 years ago when the University of Maine system adopted PeopleSoft as their enterprise resource planning software system. At that time, there were 3 modules that were acquired. Our student information system, which was referred to as Campus Solutions, human capital management, which is our HR system, and our financial system, which handles our budget and general ledger and transactions and things like that. So PeopleSoft is a tool that's designed to be very tightly integrated together. And in some regards it is, in other regards it isn't. But one of the things that I'll note is that when PeopleSoft was implemented about 20 years ago, it was really driven by the need for the university to get away from a legacy mainframe student information system called ISIS. And yes, that is ISIS. Many configuration decisions were made at that time to help encourage campuses to embrace this new platform. There were concessions that were made, including allowing campuses to make some decisions around how the system would be configured and how data would be coded in the system. So there was a lot of anxiety at the time about having campus autonomy over how the tool was going to work to support their unique campus needs. So that was indulged back then. I think we're in a different day and age and have an opportunity to rethink that strategy as we move forward to a future state of what Main Street is going to provide for all of our campuses. So if we take a look at where Main Street is today and what the key challenges are that we are facing, I've articulated a couple of them here and highlighted some keywords in red. The key thing being that we have a large number of customizations in the platform. Those customizations were incorporated to allow campuses to be able to maintain that autonomy, to have those separate data configurations, different workflows, different processes defined in the system. We have to actually code the system behind the scenes to operate in a fashion that allows and respects those independent natures for each of the campuses. Unfortunately, we have thousands of these bits of codes in the current environment. And every time we do an upgrade or a patch or a fix, we have to test each one of those customizations. That adds time and burden to our functional offices because they have to retest and revalidate each of those customizations. We have to rewrite them oftentimes, and it just really slows things down. We are behind the curve in terms of keeping a pace with the current version of PeopleSoft in many of our modules, but we are doing our best to keep up with the changes that are occurring in that space. We also have less than optimal process standardization. Even though we share a single environment across all of our universities, we have different standards and processes in place. Jeff St. John talked about some of those with the study away form and the internal credit transfer. There are literally several different ways that campuses process those forms right now. So he's leading the effort to try to standardize on that so we can actually build it into the system. We also have a lack of data and coding consistency. And that is, again, a result of the campuses making decisions on this department needs to be coded this way and these courses need to be coded this particular way because that's how our campus needs it. But we now are realizing the pinch points of that and standing in the way for institution-wide or system-wide collaboration, particularly on the academic affairs side of the house. So that's going to be a problem. And those code-based barriers also inhibit other academic collaboration opportunities that we have available to us. So knowing that, and that these are the key problems, what we did is we took a look at what the current state is operationally and what the future state might look like. So I've diagrammed this, and I use this because people say this is a good visual. In this particular instance on the left-hand side, I'm showing you what the data architecture does for us. Even though all of our students are housed in a single database, they're assigned a single unique identifier. That identifier is the same regardless of what campus the student enrolls in. But hypothetically, a student can enroll in multiple degree programs on multiple campuses. And even if those degree programs are in essence identical, what happens when the student gets coded in the system, the academic record is not going to look the same because of those unique campus configuration, those unique data decisions. That makes it a challenge for us to try to report on student activity across the system. And as I said, to foster some more of that academic collaboration that we were aiming for under unified accreditation. So the future state is really about re-architecting the data structure for that single database environment so that we have a more universal student academic record. That doesn't mean it's going to be, we're going to enforce the same standards across all the campuses, but this gives us an opportunity to roll credits up, credits earned, to apply those to a student's preferred or designated degree program and make sure that they graduate on time with as little debt as possible. So we're aiming for an environment where we actually have a portable student record that could be plugged into any degree program on any campus while respecting their preferred or their home campus designation. So lots of work to do with that. Easy to draw on a diagram like that, difficult to pull off in practice. Knowing that we did engage with Huron, who is also helping with the strategic plan for the university, as you were aware. They came in and did a deep dive of our ERP environment. And they were asked to assess our current status, our business processes that we have in place, and help us identify key opportunities for improvement in the Main Street environment. They came back with recommending a number of opportunities to focus on, but I bucket them into three key recommendations that they came forward with. The first was knowing that we have a heavy investment and lots of expertise with the Campus Solutions Student Information System. Let's take the opportunity to re-implement it. Rebuild it from the ground up with the notion of having greater coding consistency, data coding consistency, and process standardization across the board. That will help us optimize the environment, make it more efficient and more usable for everyone, most importantly, our students. The second one, recommendation was our HR and finance modules are growing a little long in the tooth. Most businesses are moving functions like that into the cloud. So this was our prime opportunity. Let's seize it and move those functions into a cloud solution. And then the third was, again, harking on that theme of eliminating some of the customizations that we have in that platform and make sure that we're able to achieve operational efficiency and elimination of technical debt across the board. So those are the three key recommendations that they had. So if you think about those recommendations, the Repaving Main Street project itself has the goals of improving the Main Street experience for all of our users, most importantly, our students, but also our faculty and our staff. One of the key things we heard from students is that they were challenged with using the current Main Street environment, particularly from their mobile devices. It was impossible to navigate, so we knew that we needed to fix that. We also needed to address some of the challenges that they have with the current degree planning tools and the degree audit functionality. Cumbersome is a generous way to describe those environments. We also have the opportunity to adopt best practices to drive process improvement and have greater standardization across the board. That's going to allow our systems, or our functional offices to better collaborate and support one another, as opposed to having our very limited staff burdened with maintaining these systems that require a lot of babysitting, and actually start to deploy some workflow automation across the board. The ability to enhance our data consistency, and this is work that has been ongoing through our data governance initiatives, is only going to help us to continue to improve our process efficiency and allow our campuses to have greater opportunities for collaboration across the board. And then the last item, or the last goal, was to minimize the number of third-party systems that we have in place to overcome some of the challenges of the way we have Main Street architected today. So I want to talk a little bit about what has been done already under the Repaving Main Street project. I've already presented much of this to the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee, but just for, again, orientation, we did launch the new Main Street experience about 2 years ago, and this included improved navigation and, more importantly, mobile-friendly access to the Main Street environment for our students. So this actually takes the Main Street environment and re-renders it when you are on a mobile device, and repositions elements so you can actually scroll through it a little bit easier. The buttons are easier to click with your finger, and it just makes it much more intuitive. The feedback that we got from the students was overwhelmingly positive, and I've never seen expressions of gratitude for something as simple as that. But just making it easier for the students went a long way. It is currently the default interface for all of our students. In addition to that, for our faculty, more for our advisors, we did include an act as user functionality as well, which allows an advisor to go in and mimic a student so they can see exactly what the student's seeing in their Main Street portal to help them navigate it and overcome any challenges that they're having with setting things up. Last year, we also launched the interactive schedule builder application. This is a tool that goes in and looks at all of the course sections available to a student when they are ready to register. It will actually optimize a schedule based on student preferences. So for instance, a student can say, I work in the mornings, I have practice in the afternoons, I need to be on campus only 2 days a week. And the schedule builder with those parameters will go in and identify the best sections that will be available for that student to register to optimize based on the degree plan to make sure that they are graduating on time. And it's going to make a recommendation, and it's plotted those course sections out on a calendar. The student can flip through them. Once they see one that they like, they can lock it in, send it to their advisor, gets approved, and they can register right from there. So it just streamlines the process altogether instead of having to go course by course, day by day, time by time. In addition to that, we have been working on with Unified Accreditation. The Department of Ed has asked us to adopt a single OPEID, which is the identifier that we use for interactions with the Department of Ed for financial aid. So each campus has their own OPEID today. We have been working for way too long now because it's not our problem. The Department of Ed has actually dragging their feet a little bit. They have a lot of things, I guess, on their plate right now, including debt forgiveness. So this hasn't been the top priority for them, but we are ready to go. We've tested it. We are ready to standardize all of our processes under a single OPEID, allowing the campuses to distribute financial aid as they have been. Last thing I'll note on the completed list is that we have integrated grading abilities between our learning management system, Brightspace, and Main Street. Prior to this functionality, if a faculty member wanted to maintain grades in the learning management system, they could do that. But then when it came time to enter midterm grades or final grades, they had to go into Main Street and re-enter those grades one by one. Obviously a burden. So this allows them to maintain their grades in the learning management system in Brightspace. And then when it comes time to enter those midterm or final grades in Main Street, they can click a button and it will import the grades from the learning management system right into Main Street, and they could submit them at that point. In terms of work that's in progress, you already heard Jeff St. John talk about the Unified Course Catalog Initiative. We are working very closely with him to make sure that the new Main Street environment will be able to leverage the Unified Course Catalog work and be able to present students with course offerings that will work for them based on their degree program and accessible right through the Main Street portal. In addition to that, we are also partnering on the study away process, making sure that there is a standardized process for students to take campuses on another campus within the system and have those credits as seamlessly as possible apply and plug into the degree program. Again, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make that work, but we are on the right path there. In addition to that, we are marching headlong into the cloud deployment for our HR and finance areas. So just to give you a sense of the number of individual projects that are going on, I'm going to map out all of the current projects on the timeline. And some of this is more anxiety inducing than anything. So if you'll bear with me, our phase one, we are currently in the middle of our design and configuration review for our initial phase one, which is going to be recruiting in the HR space. Now, why did we choose recruiting in the HR space first? Mostly it's because the platform that we have today is not the best platform. I'm going to say that politically correct. And Loretta can confirm that for me. But also more importantly, it goes end of life in June of next year. So there was a sense of urgency with getting a new platform up and running. So we did prioritize that. So core HR and recruiting is up first. We already got our first look at what that system looks like. We're in the process of testing it, and we hope and we are on track to go live with our new recruitment system by May of 2023. Parallel to that, we are also working on the configuration of the full HR suite, which includes payroll, benefits, time and labor, onboarding, and performance management. So all of those elements are currently being mapped out and designed. We are going to have our first opportunity to get in and take a look at what that system looks like in probably the December timeframe. But we will actually, we're aiming to go live with that full suite of HR functionality in January of 2024. Then at the same time, we are also looking at the finance area. So financial planning, the general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchasing, our budget planning processes. This is work that's ongoing. We're still in somewhat of a discovery phase with this particular project. We're ironing things out like, how do we consolidate the number of department codes that we have across the system? Just to give you a sense, if you look at the number of unique departments that we have defined in Main Street today, it's about 7,000. Guess what? We don't have 7,000 departments in the University of Maine system. We've used the departments because there are limitations in the general ledger right now on categorizing expenses. So a single department may have several unique department codes to help them with categorizing expenses. You don't need to do that in the cloud. So now we have to unwind a lot of that and recode and consolidate our department structure. That takes time, that takes work. In fact, that's one of the things I'm in the back corner over there working on today because we have a decision to make on that this week. So we're in the process of getting that set up. Our goal is to go live with the new financials suite at the end of next fiscal year. So that would mean we'd be live on that platform in July of 2024. Then we have all the campus solutions work. And again, we are not moving the student information system to the cloud. We are actually rebuilding this with our on-premise solution, but building it from the ground up with the unified accreditation principles in mind. We are in the initial discovery phase with that particular project. We are engaging with our stakeholder offices, making sure that everyone has an opportunity to tell us what their key pain points are, what are our opportunities for process improvement, and how do we make this system work optimally for our student population. I'll share that the engagement has been phenomenal. Though we are starting to maybe wear people out. We have kicked off our discovery sessions. I've done a campus tour. We've had over 450 people participate in those sessions. We have a number of discovery sessions by functional office planned out. In fact, by request. We had to extend the discovery process because there were more functional offices or more people said, hey, I'd like to be able to participate in this as well. So we've extended our discovery process out through February of next year. And at that time, we will then start to prototype and design what this new Main Street environment might look like. Key thing I'd like to point out is that as we are going down the repaving Main Street process for campus solutions, we will be making iterative improvements to our current environment as we are building the future state environment. Where we can take advantage of opportunities for improvement, we're going to build that into our current environment. Some things we're not going to be able to do, like having the unified catalog just up and running for everyone. That's probably going to have to wait until we have the more fully baked new version up and running. But things like the study away process, streamlining that, automating it, eliminating paper-based routing where and when possible. Those are things we are going to build into our current environment. So this is going to be a process improvement exercise all the way leading up to the launch of the new campus solutions environment, which as the slide depicts, I'm putting an asterisk there. I have no idea if we're going to hit it, but we're saying fall 2026. Might be the time when we have this new fully baked version of campus solutions. But keep in mind, we're going to have the better standardized processes on the HR, the finance, the general ledger, accounts receivable, accounts payable, student invoicing. All of that will be available prior to that time. But we are mapping all of those out as we speak. So lots of work, lots of engagement. And my challenge is to keep folks engaged without burning them out. But we know that this needs to be done because our current environment is a little challenging. We do have our project website that I would encourage you to take a look at, where we have all of our sessions defined, project outcomes, decisions that we're making, everything's cataloged on this website. And we really thank you for your continued support for this critical initiative. And I look forward to providing our next update probably next year. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Good thing it's not a lot of work. Trustee Alexander.
An incredulous amount of work. Do you have sufficient funding to make this happen?
Next question.
Yeah, making sure Ryan's not looking directly at me. So the funding that we requested and that was allocated, it's sufficient for the goals we have today.
Right.
That said, as we are going through these discovery processes, we're surfacing new needs, new things, new platforms, new tools that people are thinking we might need. So keeping the scope from not creeping beyond the bounds of the budget is a challenge that we have. But today we have enough money to do what we've said we are going to do.
Well, I think that's an important update as part of future presentations, because this is not my field, but I've watched a lot of large public utilities try to do this, and there's always problems. There's always red flags that pop up and unexpected errors and concerns. You know, I sympathize with the level of detail involved in this and the long-term nature of the project. Just from my perspective, I just want you to let us know what the board can do to help make this happen in a way that's timely, and that it has the necessary resources.
Deeply appreciate that. Thank you.
Others? Trustee Bartholomew and
Thank you,
then
Chair.
trustee Cates. no?
Quick
Okay.
question for you. So, and just, we're saying repaving Main Street. Are we in fact bringing on a new system, or are we just buying enhancements from a existing system?
Yeah, I'll share a story of how we arrived at the repaving Main Street title for that. Because it is truly that we are leveraging some of the stuff that we have in hand today, particularly on the student information side. And when you repave a road, you know, you don't take away all the tarmac and throw it away and put in new tarmac, you recycle it. And that's in essence what we are doing with the campus solutions environment. We're taking our existing knowledge, our existing tool set, our existing skill set, and deploying it in a way and re-architecting the road such that it will help us to achieve the goals under unified accreditation.
So are we doing a tremendous amount of data migration through this from an old system, a disparate system, to this new kind of unified system?
So two things with that, definitely on the cloud side. So those cloud modules, the HR and the finance, there's a lot of data migration and conversion that will occur in that space because it is in essence a different system. It's more elegant in terms of how it's designed and set up to allow for modern businesses to do what they need to do. On the student information side, I expect that we will have a lot of data mapping that will occur. If you'll allow me to go into the technical weeds just a little bit. One of the key things that's standing in our way to enable what we are trying to do with unified accreditation is the fact that we have these hard-coded definitions for an institution. And in PeopleSoft, those institution definitions create these silos. And student data doesn't move between them if they're stamped with this institutional designation. So I'm not saying this is going to happen, but we are looking at, is it better for us to have a single institution defined in campus solutions and have the campus locations sort of driving the independent campus nature designations for what a departmental structure might look like? That will allow us to have more credit portability across those silos without having to convert them from one area to another. So those are the types of things that we're looking at there.
One final question, then I will yield my time. So when we do this, each campus, I suspect, is there going to be some configuration that we're going to go through a process improvement to make sure that GL code 1500 over here on campus Farmington is the same as Orono, or are we trying to get that level of consistency across the organization?
Yes and no. So in administrative units, we're trying to achieve that standardization in terms of department structure. On the academic affairs side, because the College of Engineering at the University of Maine may have, and bear with me, Joan, I don't know if mathematics falls under that college or not. Wherever math is going to fall in under different colleges depending on the different campuses. So we may have to maintain that hierarchy of campus, college, department specific to a campus location on the academic side. And again, that's exactly the exercise I'm working on in the corner over there.
Thank you.
Trustee Kane.
Thank you so much. This is fascinating and it is complicated. And all I am thinking about is how the person who will never attend an orientation session, who's a student who will log in to register for their classes, it just needs to be super easy and intuitive. And I think I just want to say that out loud because this is super complicated and the back end is very complicated and it is painstaking and it is detailed and it is super. But I hope we are never forgetting that the front dashboard needs to be, I mean, I remember ISIS. I was in that system and navigated it and then made the transition, not glamorous, but successful overall. I just am imagining the heartburn of the student trying to get into the class they need to get to finish their major and seeing something new. So I think we need to just want to say out loud, maintaining the focus on making it easy and clear and intuitive.
Absolutely. And those are the key driving principles behind getting that new Main Street experience launched. So we took the elements that were consistent across the campuses and made sure that those were exposed through that interface. So it was as easy as possible. And as we go through this exercise, the process of accepting an award, the process of paying your bill, we're hoping that we can achieve more standardization across all the campuses so that we can build a single sort of tutorial for a student. And regardless of what campus you are on, you're going to be able to navigate those administrative steps consistently.
And will you be able to do it from your phone?
Absolutely.
Great.
And Trustee Cates.
Following up on Emily's point, we're not the only system in the country. And I assume that other systems are going through similar efforts to do what we're trying to do? And have you been able to learn from other systems, or are they learning from us, or both?
I think, as I understand it, a lot of folks that are on PeopleSoft right now have their eyes on what we are doing in this space. So there's a lot of interest in how we are tackling this problem, how we get more standardization and optimization in the platform. We don't have a lot of models to follow, unfortunately, in this space. But we do have the opportunity to leverage what we already know, what works in the system and what doesn't, to architect this system to work optimally for unified accreditation. And I realize there's one key thing that I neglected to say here. What we are doing on the technical side is not going to drive unified accreditation. What we are aiming to do is eliminate the barriers that are in the way of achieving what we want to do under unified accreditation in the system. So we're trying to build more flexibility into it to accommodate what our academic affairs colleagues will be doing with unified catalog and unified accreditation program collaboration across the board.
Thanks. Did I see Professor Mitchell?
David, I wanted to say thank you very much for all the work that you've done. The improvements in Main Street and the user friendliness is just incredible. The transformations really has been wonderful for our students. There was a question from my colleagues, obviously, and Trustee Kane brought it up, you're developing kind of tutorials for the students to know how to manage the changes as they go through. And I know there have been something similar for faculty. Will there be something so that faculty can understand what the students need to do, so we can help them when they get stuck?
Yes, I would say the act as user functionality is sort of the very surface, a step in that direction. So an advisor can actually see exactly what the student is seeing in their environment. But I think what you're asking is more about how do we help a student make sure that they stay on track? What opportunities they might have for engagement with the campus community? How do we help actually drive and foster more student success initiatives and student retention across the board? So I'd imagine when we get through this, we'll have a much tighter integration with all of those areas so that it will become just a part of the routine things that you do in Main Street, as opposed to having to log into this particular tool to find out what your student activities are, or to pay your bill, or to figure out how to get from point A to point B. So I'm envisioning an environment that's going to be much more comprehensive in terms of what's housed in this tool, and also help us to make better decisions on how we advise students on what they should be doing next. A key challenge that we do have is cleaning up and maintaining our what we call degree progress reports in the Main Street environment. And these are our academic degree program tracks. And there's a lot of variability in how campuses define those. But as we can get more consistency in that process, we can better help the students leverage that tool to make sure that they're taking the right courses at the right time so they graduate in the shortest amount of time possible.
Yeah, I know the degree audits are they're a challenge at the moment, but I think it's because of the different coding.
Yeah.
So students can't really rely on them, which means there's a lot of duplication of effort. To double check
Absolutely.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Can I just ask, I am recalling an unfortunate situation in state government where there was a major conversion in the Department of Health and Human Services that didn't work, and there was no redundant system. Do we build redundancy into this in case you hit a pothole you didn't expect on Main Street?
I didn't hear about that. What happened? So yes and no. Our fallback plan is that we can continue. We have perpetual licensing for our existing HR environment. Failure is not an option for us, and we did not launch into this without a strong belief and recognition that we could accomplish this given the structures that we have today. So if you're asking me if we have a backup platform teed up in the cloud, I'd say the answer to that is no. Our fallback plan would be to extend to delay the go live dates for the cloud migration a little bit until we figure out what we need to do to make it work. But our current HR environment isn't going away until we pull the plug completely out of it and flip the switch to go live with the new environment. But
And
that's
same
not
as-
going to happen.
The same, I assume, with the student, to Trustee Kane's point, to the student platform.
Well, the student platform, again, that one's not going away. So Campus Solutions as it exists today will continue to exist. What I'm envisioning is a smooth cutover to this new environment that we're building from the ground up. But along the way, we're going to be making these iterative improvements to the current environment so that when you get to the point when you're ready to flip the switch on the new environment, it's probably not going to be that drastic. It's probably going to look very similar to what this future state environment is going to look like as a result of our efforts there.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, sorry. Trustee Singram.
I want to echo what Professor Mitchell said. For students, Main Street is glamorous and it's fabulous. And when we go to sign up for classes, we utilize all of its tools, schedule builder, everything. It's very user friendly. When you're talking about silos and information sharing, I'm wondering what the data privacy concerns are and what safeguards are being put in place as information maybe gets shared more across campuses and exposes the data to more vulnerabilities.
That's a great question. In all reality, as I pointed out in that diagram that you saw with the two pictures, the one on the left, we are already in a shared environment. So there is already access, and we have these agreements in place with functional office users that they are only accessing data that they need to. We do have some guardrails that are in place to allow or not allow for folks to extract data out of one environment that doesn't belong to them. So there are permissions in place that will perpetuate those and maintain those. But we do have a data governance initiative that works on issues just like that. Who should have access to what data? And how do we make sure that they're able to do their jobs as effectively as possible in serving our students? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Who knew data could be so exciting?
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Robert did know that. Was it? Ryan, are we back to you?
I think that actually concludes that portion of the agenda. Now we're shifting over to the FY23 budget. So let me provide just a little bit of context first. This will be a recap for most of you that participated in the FFT discussions earlier this month. As I noted then, changes to the current year budget are a pretty common occurrence. We're doing enrollment projections right now for next fall. And if we get that exactly right, I will buy everyone here a beer next year when we're back doing this. We always have adjustments there. We always have adjustments with occupancy rates. And again, as I noted at FFT in the past, we allowed campuses to generally just kind of manage this on their own as they went through the current budget year process. Probably 6 or 7 years ago, we made the shift over to having this kind of supplemental process, if you will, right around the October census date. And so that's what I'm here for today. The resolutions that I'm going to talk about this morning, and the ones that you'll see when a couple of other campuses come forward in January, they tend to be fairly simple in nature. They're not simple in the sense of going out and achieving those savings is not simple, but it's pretty consistently, one or two categories where you're going to find to solve a budget hole in the current fiscal year. I've talked about plenty of times, some of our campuses are as high as 80% personal services and people. And when you have a budget deficit and your budget is mostly people, you can't turn on a dime. And so it's not unusual that the solutions that you're going to see for current year are one time. That is largely the case today. And then we build that in as we prepare the 2024 budget. To the extent that any of these gaps are going to continue, then that's the place where we'll look to line up revenues and expenses. I did mention the solutions again are fairly simple. I think the ones you're going to hear today fall into probably three categories. One is, and the biggest one is salary savings. So again, these are positions that have not been filled. Somebody leaves in July and you don't hire someone again until October. So campuses are accruing salary savings. And so those are part of the solution that you'll see today. Same concept with expense reductions. We've got 4 or 5 months under our belt now. We have a good understanding where expenses are. In some cases, we've been able to achieve savings there, and campuses will offer those up as part of their solution. And the final category that I'll mention that shows up in at least 3 of the 4 that you're going to see today are the federal funds, so the federal HERF funds. So several of our campuses have exhausted those resources. They did that either as part of the 2020, 21, 22 budgets. We did have a handful of campuses that did have some resources left, and you'll see those presented today as well. We do, for those of you that are not, I think most of you have been around for the budget process, but we do have 7 budgets that you approve. Used to have 7 of the individual campuses. We've since moved University of Maine at Machias under Joan and the team at Orono. But just about the same time that we did that, we pulled the law school out from under USM, and so you're still approving 7 budgets. 4 of them you're going to see today. They are Augusta, Fort Kent, Presque Isle, and USM. You will get 2 more in January. At that time, we'll present changes to get the Farmington budget back in line, and we'll present the UMaine budget at that time as well. UMaine had a new CBO just coming in. I think Kelly's actually right behind me. So welcome to her to, I think, her first board meeting. But we wanted to certainly give Kelly an opportunity to take a look at that budget before we brought that in front of you. So that budget and the Farmington budget we'll bring to you in January. And unless things change, we will bring you no revisions to the Maine law budget, because that is still in balance and moving along nicely. So congratulations to Lee and Nicole and the team there. One more point, and then I'll get into the individual campuses. In a couple of cases you're going to see today, campuses are using campus reserves to close their 2023 budget gaps. So when I was at FFT, for instance, we talked about specific transfers that were going to occur at USM and were going to occur at UMA. What I wanted to note, and this is the same way we handle system reserve transfers, so it's not inconsistent at the campus level, is that we won't transfer, even if we know today, like I talked to you last month, and President Zakis talked to you last month about $1 million gap at UMA due to some enrollment changes. We figure that will be closed by transfer from reserves, but we don't transfer the reserve dollars today. We will spend between now and the end of June looking for other opportunities to reduce that gap. So I know, for instance, even though I'm going to talk about the $1 million, I know that Joe and his team have already reduced that gap down by several $100,000 through other opportunities that have come along, other savings initiatives, other attrition. And so those numbers will change. And so to recognize that, one of the things that the chancellor had asked us to do at the beginning of the fiscal year was to get budget updates from each of the campuses on a monthly basis. And so we do that, and just got October budget updates just at the end of last week. We use those to track campuses as well. In between these meetings, we'll use them to update you as well as we move forward. So with that context, let me just quickly roll through the 4 campuses that you have today. In your materials, we had asked each of the campuses to put together 1, 2, 3 slides on their 2023 budgets. Those are in your materials. I won't review those, but that's where you'll get some of that additional detail. These are the budget sheets you see up on the screen behind the chair. And so what I thought probably the easiest thing to do was just really quickly show you literally where these changes are occurring. So if I start at UMA, and that's the UMA budget you see up there, if you've got really good eyes, that's the E&G budget. Overall, the president talked to you again a couple of weeks ago. Budgeted credit hours at UMA are down, creating a projected shortfall when we put this together of about $1 million. You see that right there in the top right. So tuition and fee revenue is down $1 million due to those credit hours. If you shift, if we can go down a couple of pages, Heather. So next is the every campus has 3 pages. So this page right here that you see the circle there is the auxiliary budget. We're going to go to one more and we'll stop right there. So that is the combined E&G and auxiliary page. And so at the top of the page, you don't need to scroll up, Heather, but at the top of the page, that $1 million deficit has kind of continued over. The auxiliary budget was in fact unchanged. So that same $1 million shortfall that you saw rolls forward and then again would eventually be solved either by reserves or additional spending reductions or saving targets. We'll move to the next slide. This gives you, this is the University of Maine at Fort Kent. So again, through a reduction in credit hours from budget, you see a budget gap at the top. It's created a E&G budget gap of about 1.5 million. You'll see an expense reduction there, right immediately under that of my eyes, 108,000. So again, the concept being you've got fewer students, so you probably don't need to spend as much as on financial aid. So you see that netting out to about 1.4 million. And then for Fort Kent on the E&G side, again, really resolved through 3 issues here. So the first one you see, the circle that's not red. So that the second one down, you see a HERF transfer. So HERF again are those federal funds. Fort Kent did have additional funds left there. And so you'll see those used on this page and the next page. So 621,000 buys that deficit down by about half. You'll see 667,000 down in the next line, which is salary savings and attrition savings. And then finally, you'll see some expense reductions of about 208,000 down just a little further in the page right there. So collectively, if you start off with a $1.5 million deficit, you take those 3 rounds of reductions. If you scroll down just a shade more, you can see that the E&G budget is now back in balance at a positive $97,000. We are going to spend that on the next page. So again, fewer students means fewer dining and room revenue. And so you see a reduction at the top of another 344,000 in lost revenue. The last portion of the HERF funds for Fort Kent is the 232,000 to offset that. If you scroll down just a little bit more, you'll see some modest expense reductions of about 14,000. That leaves the auxiliary budget $97,000 out of balance. You'll recall we carried over 97,000 from E&G. So if we flip the page, ideally, we're going to see a nice little 0 at the bottom of this page. There it is. So that does get the Fort Kent budget back into balance. Love when that math works. So next we'll go to Presque Isle. And again, fairly simple one at Presque Isle. So again, like others, credit hours down, the mix of in-state and out-of-state down. And so you'll see a gap of about 320,000. It is resolved through two issues in this case. One is compensation savings. You can see at the top of the slide, I think there, 260,000. There are expense reductions of 116,000. And then ideally that would leave us with a E&G savings, if you will, of 57,000. If we scroll to the next page, which should be the auxiliary side, here you can see that fuel and electricity costs are up. So they're up by $57,000. So again, up on one, down on the other. But if we scroll to the next page, you'll see that we are back into balance as signaled by my circle. And then finally, last campus we will do today is the University of Southern Maine. So again, enrollment shortfall, you see that at the top of the page of roughly $2 million. This gap is resolved really through three issues going on. One is expense reductions. So you'll see expense reductions of about 328,000 across a variety of categories, some of those salary. That gets you to an E and G gap. You can see right there of about 1.67 million. The president this morning talked about the occupancy rates at USM. It is up substantially over budget. I think the president talked about 108. I think we budgeted at 95. So the difference between that is about a $700,000 in additional revenue. We'll flip to the last page. The 700,000 will offset those expense reductions that we talked about on the front page. Brings you down to a gap of just a little less than $1 million, which USM would close through the use of her for federal funding. Again, that number, like at UMA, is subject to change. If other savings opportunities come along, we're always going to do what we can to preserve our flexibility around reserves. So that will be the last place we go. So that again is the 4 campuses that we're bringing to you today. We will bring 2 more to FFT in January.
Great.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Questions or comments? Trustee Cates.
Thank you. First, I'd like to maybe state the obvious, and that is how lucky we are to have Ryan Lowe, who used to do this for a slightly larger organization, state of Maine. We are truly blessed that he's in the position he's in, particularly as we face difficult times. Just wanted to mention a couple of things. One, looking ahead toward next year, as we see campus reserves are being spent now, and out of necessity being spent, those are dwindling. The federal funds that he referred to are basically gone now after this year. And just looking ahead with the challenges of demographics that we all know about, with some rather significant increases we're going to be looking at in energy costs going ahead, and with an uncertain future about state appropriations. We just don't know. The state's been very good to us, and hopefully that will continue, but we don't know that. It means that we're going to have a very difficult budget discussion, not closing the gap on 23, but looking ahead to 24, and no easy solutions. And I think it puts the focus even more on the importance of the strategic planning process that Trustee Kane is leading, and thinking about how we're going to be having a sustainable financial model going forward. It's going to require some hard discussions, which I know we're up to, but it increases the importance of that process. And just wanted to mention that as we begin to look ahead to 24.
Well said. Thank you. Others? Seeing none, I know we've been pretty familiar in FFT with this. Why don't we move to the proposed resolution? Thank you, Ryan. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee and approves the FY23 proposed operating budget revisions for UMA, UMFK, UMPI, and USM. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Martin, seconded by Trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Let's move now. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
I did see this hand come up.
Okay, we saw your hand, Mike. We've got it. Thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Let's nice preview by Trustee Cates. Let's move on to the issues of energy and ask President are you going to do a presentation on this? President McDonald?
Again?
Good. This is the energy savings performance contract.
Last night in my remarks, I mentioned that we are seeking to enter into a energy savings contract. This would be about $11.7 million. It will upgrade our basically all of our buildings. It will result in a savings of $400,000 each year. It will leave the campus at essentially free of fossil fuels. And it will increase the value, the net asset value of our facilities up to 67% of their replacement value. The other thing is we entered into a agreement with Bank of America to before interest rates rose, that we can finance this at a very reasonable rate, just a little bit above 3%, which is kind of money that you cannot borrow now. And that is good until November 28th. So if this is approved, we will be able to enter into this. I think it's a win-win all around. No downside to this.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you. Oh,
As mentioned, the campus put together a small slide deck on this one, and I think we're gonna possibly bring it up at an upcoming FFT meeting, but just wanted to acknowledge, we've been tracking net asset value for quite some time. The board set short-term and long-term goals, and the short-term goals that we set probably back in 2012, we have made no progress towards whatsoever. We've consistently gone backwards almost every single year. And so it is fabulous. If you get a chance to look at this presentation, you can see the net asset value, the change by individual building. And so to move from, a campus that has been, you can look at the campus net asset value over the last 10 years. We have them in the campus profiles, and it's 54, it's 53, it's 52. It's just this downward slide. And so to make a significant move like this is really, really a big deal. And jumping right past the short-term goal, almost to what the board's long-term goal is, which is to get to 70%. So just want to acknowledge there's very few things we do here where you can see the needle move literally. And this is a big one. So I just wanted to acknowledge the great work.
it is. Thank you. And thank you for the tour of the plant. Seeing no further questions, the resolution is that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the FFT Committee and approves the financing ESPC and project authorization resolution to authorize the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine at Farmington to fund an ESPC project implementing energy conservation measures related to 30+ campus buildings with a project total of up to 11.7 million using the BAPCC Master Equipment Lease Purchase Agreement Energy Addendum with a maximum principal amount of debt of 11 million. Could I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Eames. All those in favor? All those opposed? Great, thank you. And thank you. It is exciting. It's good to have good news. Let's move on to Trustee Policy 401 on general equal opportunity. I believe. Oh, you want to interrupt and do this?
No, I want to, you said 11 million and it's 11.7.
11 with a 11.7 million with a maximum principal amount of debt of 11 million.
Okay. Okay.
Just say it's 11 million finance for the rest from.
Right.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. That's better safe than sorry.
Well, I didn't want to miss the deadline on on the note.
Yep. No, we're fine. Okay, good. Loretta, do you have something to share with us? Tab 11 in your work.
Good morning. The changes to the Board of Trustees, recommendations for changes to the Board of Trustees Policy 401, which is the general employment opportunity, is being changed to include protected classes that were outlined in the federal and state laws, as well as the American Bar Association standards also has made changes to their requirements. And in addition, these changes will provide an alignment and clarity for the UMS system. In addition, these changes supports the chancellor's imperative for change initiative, that it supports the goal to rebuild systems that are fair and just for all people. And the changes in the policy as outlined in highlighted in red is adding language that is currently not included in our policy, that is now a part of federal and state law, as well as the ABA, the American Board of Law, the ABA. So
And that includes ancestry, gender identity, physical and mental disability. We have disability, but we didn't specifically address the physical and the mental aspect of it. And then we also need to include, because of the ABA accreditation, ethnicity, gender identity, and military status. So those are the changes that we're including in our updated policy.
Thank you. Any questions for the CHRO? Seeing none, thank you, Laura. The text is that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Human Resources and Labor Relations Committee and approves the proposed changes to Board Policy 401, General Equal Employment Opportunity as presented. Do I have a motion? Motion, Trustee Bartholomew, second. Second by Trustee Dobson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Let's move on. We have two issues, tab 12 and 13, that again, we've seen before, and our clerk, Ellen Doughty, will walk us through. Why don't you do both 12 and 13? We'll go to the resolutions afterwards.
Sure, thank you. The first one is a new proposed policy of 315. It's commemorative name and renaming of academic units. This is in the last stage of the approval process. It has been to the Academic and Student Affairs Committee as an information as well as an action item. It was at the last board meeting as an information item, and it is being presented today for approval by the board. This particular policy was developed at the request of the campuses to give them some guidance on how to name or rename academic units and school programs. Go to the next one. The next one is also a proposed change to board policy. This particular policy is 803, naming and renaming of physical facilities. This also has been reviewed by the committee level, the FFT committee, as an information item and an action item. It was at the last board meeting as an information item. The only change in this is to align the approval process with the policy above, which was 315.
Great, thank you. And again, we've seen these plenty of times. So let's go to the text that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves the proposed new Board of Trustees Policy 315, naming and renaming academic units and programs as presented. Motion? Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Eames. All those in favor? All those opposed? We'll do hand raising to be consistent, I guess. And tab 13, that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee and approves the proposed changes to the Board of Trustee Policy 803, naming and renaming of physical facilities as presented. Motion?
Second.
Moved by Trustee Dobson, seconded by Trustee Kane. All those in favor? Hands. All those opposed? Thank you. Passes. The next one is again something we've seen before, the revised mission statement. President Edmondson, do you want to speak to it? Do you want to answer questions?
Sure, I can just speak to the fact that this was before the ASA and before the Board of Trustees as an information item in the past. It does reflect, in my opinion, a very inclusive process at the University of Southern Maine as people weighed in and had a lot of investment in this mission statement. And so I thank you again for your consideration today.
Great, and it's short and precise. Thank you. The resolution that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves the changes to Board Policy 301.3 USM mission as presented. Motion? Trustee Flood, seconded by Trustee Kane. All those in favor, hands. All those opposed? Passes. Our next item of business is confirmation of faculty and student representatives to the board. We are reappointing Dimitri Bam from the School of Law for a 2-year term, November 22nd, 2022 to 2024. And we have a new student rep, Jessica Coombs, and I believe President Hadeen can speak to that.
Yes, thank you. UMFK brings forth Jessica Combs as the UMFK student representative. She is a junior currently. She's pursuing a degree, Bachelor of Science in Conservation Law with a concentration in law enforcement. She is an active student leader on our campus as a student senate Realtor, as well as participating in a number of clubs, Student Athlete Advising Committee, Conservation Law Club, Sustainability Club, Hidden Opponent Club. She also was a member of the women's track and field team during spring 2022, which they were national champions. So thank you for this opportunity.
Right, terrific. Any questions? The resolution that the Board of Trustees approves the appointments of faculty and student representatives to the Board of Trustees as presented. Moved by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Loring. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on. We've got 3 tenure requests. The material is the very significant material is in your board book, and we'll ask the presidents to help us through it. So the first is from President Farini Mundy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have 2 requests coming forward, and I'd like, as she walks up to the podium, to introduce Dr. Hannah Carter, who is today here in place of Provost John Vollen. She is the Associate Provost for Online and Continuing Education to present. Trustee, shall we present both
Sure,
at once?
please do.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be with you in person this morning. I am representing academic affairs at the University of Maine, and I have also additional files of information. I can answer any questions, but for the sake of time and to keep the agenda on target, again, if there are any specific questions, I'm happy to answer those. We have these 2 to move forward to hopefully achieve tenure.
I think you have time to say a word or 2 about each.
Okay, perfect. I didn't know how brief I should be. I'm trying to keep the agenda. Okay, sorry about that. The first one that you will have in front of you is Dr. Ezekiel Kimball, who we are seeking to be awarded tenure at the rank of professor in the School of Educational Leadership, Higher Education, and Human Development, effective on his start date of July 1, 2022. He was recently appointed as Associate Dean for Undergraduate and Teacher Education in the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Maine. He was selected after a very rigorous national search and comes to the University of Maine very highly regarded, and I can attest to this, has already hit the ground running in his Associate Dean role. Again, he has received support from his department, from the college, from the ASA committee, certainly from the provost and the president as well.
And why don't you do the next one as well? And then we'll just take them while you're
Perfect.
here.
And the next one, and I apologize, I am practicing Dr. Giovanna. I've been practicing her name. I still have another month or so before she comes. So the second one is obviously our next Dean of the College of Engineering that we're very excited that she will be joining us. She will be joining us in January of 2023. And again, we would like to seek her awarding of tenure to coincide with her appointment. Again, she was selected after a very rigorous national search, which many of you were a part of as well. Her credentials have been reviewed by the faculty and staff in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. She has their full support, as well as the provost, the president, and the ASA committee as well.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we will go to each of them. The first is that, and I'm really pleased that we don't seem to have, in the resolution, we don't have the name, so we're free from, we still have time to work on the pronunciation.
Yes.
That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves tenure at the time of hire professor in the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Maine with tenure to be effective July 1, 2022. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee McMahon. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. The next is that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves tenure at the time of hire professor in the College of Engineering at UMaine with tenure to be effective January 16th, 2023. Moved by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee McMahon. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion catches and passes, and congratulations to both. Let's turn to USM, and President Edmondson has one as well.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to present Dr. Daniel Wong and ask that he be awarded tenure at the rank of professor in the Department of Counseling Education. He's had the full support of the staff and faculty of the Department of the Counselor Education and of our provost, myself, and the chancellor. And he will be starting effective January 1st, 2023.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, the resolution is that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves tenure at time of hire professor of the Department of Counselor Education at USM with tenure effective July 1, 2023. Motion? Trustee Flood, Trustee McMahon, second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Great, and congratulations as well to Professor. Let's turn to Trustee Ames for the consent agenda.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to applaud you for staying exactly what appears to be on time. Maybe even 3 minutes early.
So don't, come on.
Yeah. I gotta fill up the last couple minutes here. Okay. I move for the Board of Trustees to approve the consent agenda, including acceptance of the minutes as outlined in the meeting materials and the items as forwarded from the October 24th, 2022 Academic and Student Affairs Committee and the October 26th, 2022 FFT Committee. The consent agenda items are tabs 19 through 26 in the meeting materials. Can I have a second? All those in favor?
Right? Yeah, but I sent you.
Anybody opposed?
From here, Lisa.
Yeah. It was passed with one abstention.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Trustee Bartholomew.
Oh, man. Emily did.
And I apparently misspoke, just for point of clarification, the tenured is a January 2023, and apparently I said July, so my mistake, and I apologize, but for the record, January. Before we conclude this meeting, I want to just take a minute, first of all, to thank everybody. It's been a terrific meeting, but you may have noticed presidents signing things, as you know, it was not very stealth. We did notice. But I think I want to take a minute because this is a very important moment in which we've taken a very important step toward unified accreditation, and ask the chancellor to explain what this document is and what it means for our steps forward.
So the MOU that I have previously referenced in executive session and session earlier today has in fact now been signed off by each of the presidents. But before I talk a little bit more about that MOU, let me be very clear that the work that was outlined on repaving Main Street is a major step also underway at this very moment. There was a lot of thought about what unified accreditation might be, but very little thought about how to implement when it was. We've been playing catch up for a number of years with respect to the potential implementation of unified accreditation. As a result of where we are, relatively few students take courses from other universities within our constellation. And it is the hope that this new tool that is available to us now will increase the number of students who can access courses, particularly in cases where the course is not available in a timely fashion to allow for timely graduation, but also for many other reasons that it might be appropriate to take a course from another university for other reasons as well, and specifically special knowledge in a particular course that may not be available in general purposes or for general purposes at that campus. And quite frankly, in some cases, because we can't afford to have that expertise at every one of our campuses. This agreement is important because it is the road forward. And I think most importantly, and I want to read this, revenue will be shared per credit hour based on the rate of the student's home campus. The revenue split is 50% of base tuition, fees, and other charges. Revenue split is 50% of base tuition, period. fees and other charges are not shared in the cross-link process. Cross-link courses is what we're talking about, and the ability to be a cross-linked course, to be available, to have the university who is inviting students from other campuses to name a number of students which they would accept, so we can manage class size going forward, and a number of other steps. But I would say to you and say to the presidents most particularly, I very much appreciate that we've reached this moment. I give Robert and Carolyn and others credit for getting us to this point. But if you're wondering about implementation, this is a very major step, and it was executed today.
Well, it's very good to applaud the success, and this is terrific. With that, I think we are, unless there is anything for the good of the University of Maine system, we are adjourned. And our next meeting is January 29th to 30th at UMA, and it won't snow that day. Could you work that out? Thank you, President Zikas. Thanks, everybody. Lunch is next, and there will be a meeting of the Retreat Planning Committee following lunch in some room. In the landing where we were last night. Yeah, we're gonna meet with our consultants.